looking for either. That's a heck of a drop.
Well, I think you need to take some perspective on all of this, because in 2016, Gavin Robertson won that seat back for the DUP, and he won it by a smaller majority than the one that he's going to win it by tonight. We then had a surge in the 2017 election on the back of Gerry Adams absolutely winding Unionists up. We didn't have that on this occasion, and we had an anticipation and expectation that the DUP vote, which peaked at 36% at that election, would be very difficult to sustain. And so that doesn't come as a surprise to me. Gavin Robertson will have had a very good victory in East Belfast. There was a lot of people who were suggesting that this was no foregone conclusion that he was going to win it. Gavin has won it, and won it well by all of the news that we're hearing.
OK, all right. Well, I'm sure he'd like to have won it by a bigger majority than 2,500. But anyway, those figures aren't confirmed at this stage.
I'm sure he's very happy.
Well, he'd be happy to be returned, but he'll not be happy that his majority's been cut. But we will talk to him and we'll ask him, and he can tell us himself. OK, let's pause for a moment or two, because I want to cross over to Tara, who's at Titanic Belfast for us, and there is an awful lot happening. And we live in hope of some kind of formal declaration sometime soon. What's the chance, do you think?
Yes, we're hearing that we could get our first result in the reasonably near future, although some speculation that Southdown is about an hour and a half away, so there's still plenty of counting to be done there. But let's have a little chat about East and North Belfast. Start with North Belfast, Stephen. What are you hearing?
Well, a big health warning attached to this, but a number of sources who are very well placed in North Belfast are suggesting that John Finucane will take the seat. No exact figures, but people talking in and around 1,000 votes. That's coming from a number of different sources who are pretty close to that situation. I have to say, Sinn Féin are being very cool about it. They're obviously not prepared to count their chickens at this stage, being quite relaxed about it, saying there's still a bit to go. But certainly those sources are suggesting that John Finucane could take the seat, and if he does, what a story that would be, to see Nigel Dodds lose his seat in North Belfast, the deputy leader of the party, arch-Brexiteer, the leader of the party at Westminster. That would really be one of the big stories of the night if that happens. But as I say, unconfirmed at the moment, and we're still waiting for obviously official results, but a lot of people suggesting from a number of sources that John Finucane is ahead.
Yeah. And just interesting, Stephen, just hearing some information that Brian Rowan, the former BBC security correspondent, has called it on Radio Ulster that John Finucane has taken the seat by 2,000 votes. So, I mean, that would be really quite remarkable.
Well, 2,000 would be an amazing margin. Remember, Nigel Dodds' margin last time was 2,000, and if you look at that, if that is the case, then perhaps you could suggest that obviously what would be key, and what may have been key this time, is the fact that there was no SDLP in the race. SDLP candidate last time polled around 2,000, so if those 2,000 votes went across to John Finucane, there's obviously a Green vote in North Belfast. That may have gone to John Finucane, and we do know factually that there were 4,000 people extra on the register. So if the Finucane campaign got the lion's share of that vote, then that could explain why that figure has gone up. But as I say, if that is the case, then that is a remarkable turnaround for Sinn Féin and a remarkable scalp, bearing in mind Nigel Dodds' status.
Yes, and I mean, no sign of Nigel Dodds so far. We have spoken to Gavin Robinson, but those, just a clarification on those figures again, have been called on Radio Ulster. 23,500 for John Finucane, 21,500 for Nigel Dodds.
Well, an amazing turnaround, and obviously, Sinn Féin will be absolutely delighted if they take that seat.
OK, let's move to East Belfast. Kevin, obviously I was talking to Gavin Robinson earlier, put that idea that the figures that his majority has gone down from around 8,000 to about 2,500. He wasn't too happy, didn't want to make a comment on that. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I've actually been hearing quite the same thing, Sarah. And interestingly, I've been hearing it from the Alliance Party, from their side. And sources in the Alliance Party are saying, look, Naomi Long has polled very well, very strongly, but not in sufficient numbers to take the seat. And that's coming from several highly placed Alliance sources. Another one saying she's done well, but not well enough.
And it'll be interesting to see how those figures shake down, because Gavin Robinson's sitting on, where have those votes gone? Has his vote gone down and hers has sort of stayed relatively steady or gone up? Or how is that going to pan out?
Yeah, well, Gavin Robinson came into this election with an 8,500 majority, a commanding majority. Naomi Long said that the seat was winnable. I think that the Alliance will be pleased with that performance if the margin narrows to 2,500 votes, and that's what I'm hearing from the Alliance Party. So a good, strong performance for Alliance, but not enough to take the seat. And it's Naomi Long's birthday today. It looks like it's not the birthday present she was hoping for.
Yeah, and Stephen, just let's have a chat about that kind of alliance vote that really has been quite unexpected. People sort of felt that the first past the post system doesn't work well for them. They work better, they gain more in a PR election. But they seem to have done remarkably well this evening.
North Down is the case in point. I mean, a lot of people that I was speaking to in North Down in recent weeks thought that the Alliance would poll well, but thought that the system of first past the post wouldn't suit them entirely. But clearly what has happened tonight in North Down is Stephen Farry has taken that seat and he's proven that Alliance can win when it comes to first past the post. You know, and after the disappointment those years ago when Naomi Long lost their Westminster seat, now they have an opportunity to send another MP back to Westminster. So they've proved that when people, I suppose from their point of view, do go out and vote for Alliance at Westminster elections, you can end up with an MP.
And do you think is it as simple as people moving away from the Ulster Unionist Party and going towards Alliance, or do you think it's slightly more nuanced than that?
I think there's a whole series of reasons why people voted Alliance in North Down. I think there's a strong Remain vote there. Lady Herman obviously was a very strong Remainer, so people in North Down will say, well, who is the strongest Remain candidate in that constituency? They had a choice between Alan Chambers and Stephen Farry. They perhaps looked at the Ulster Unionists and thought, well, hang on a minute, they were a Remain party, and then there was a bit of confusion. Were they a Leave party or were they a Remain party? They probably thought that Stephen Farry was the strongest Remain candidate, so they would have backed him then. Remember, of course, there was an Alliance surge in North Down in the local elections, so people were used to voting Alliance. And then I suppose there were some, Liberal Unionists who in the past would have voted for Lady Herman and perhaps felt that the values and ideals of Stephen Farry were closer to Lady Herman than Alex Easton or Alan Chambers. So I think that's why that vote would have moved that way. Plus, Alliance activists on the ground have been very busy over the last few weeks trying to get that vote out.
And interesting, considering it was a snap election, they didn't have that much time to kind of establish that campaign.
No, well, they didn't, but they were certainly active in terms of posters, in terms of canvassing, in terms of getting the leaflets out. Having said that, Stephen Farry, of course, MLA for North Down. He was a minister in the Stormont Executive, very well-known figure, and of course they had those extra councillors elected in May. So it was a good base for the Alliance to build on, and obviously they're now going to send Stephen Farry to Westminster.
Interesting night indeed. Plenty more to come, but for now, thanks very much indeed. Mark.
Tara, thank you very much indeed. We heard Jim Shannon announced as the MP returned for Strangford. Let's hear what he had to say when he spoke after his declaration had been made.
This election was about many things, and the Northern Ireland Assembly, non-functioning as it is, was number one. Number two was the union, and for me and the people that I met and the constituents I have, it was about preserving the union. And the union was very important, and the union has been degraded and downgraded by Boris Johnson. I suppose the best way to describe Boris Johnson is, and it's for the record, he would take your Alsatian dog for a walk, he'd come back an hour later and he'd give you a chihuahua and he'd say it was all right. So we need to convince Boris Johnson of the importance of the union. We need to convince Boris Johnson that we in the DUP, with our numbers that we will return, are very important, that we do our bit to make sure that the union, for those who live in Leicester, London, Manchester, Newcastle, or wherever else in the United Kingdom, also is the same for the people of Strangford, and the people of Strangford have told me that.
So there you go, Jim Shannon talking to everyone at his count. He's safely on his way back to Westminster. I think I'm joined now on the line by Stephen Farry, who is, I can say, the new MP for North Down. Congratulations to you, Mr. Farry. Well done. Has it sunk in?
Thanks, Mark. Well, I'm still coming to terms with it a little bit, I think. I haven't given too much thought to what would happen after the election. The focus was all about getting through the polling day and getting the best result possible. So I have a lot to do over the next couple of days, I suspect.
I suspect you do. Can we clarify one thing before we go any further? Whenever I spoke to you, whatever it was, an hour and a half ago or thereabouts, did you have any inkling at that time that you might be about to win the seat? Because you have a very good poker face if you did. You gave us the distinct impression here in the studio that it wasn't going to be a good night for you.
Oh, I was being coy at that point, Mark, because we had probably done about half our tallies. And at that stage, it was neck and neck between myself and Alex as to who was going to come through. So we were still waiting for 3 more boxes to come through before we had a clearer picture. So I suppose it was an accident of timing as such. You probably got to be a little bit too early in terms of our tally process.
Let me ask you this. You're trading a potential ministerial career at Stormont for a backbench job at Westminster. Are there any regrets on your part to be doing that? Because people might think the more useful, the more connected politics in terms of what you deliver for your constituents might be here rather than there.
Well, I think both Northern Ireland, in terms of the Assembly, and what happens at Westminster, and indeed the European Parliament, as long as we still have access to that, are all going to be crucial over the next number of months and indeed years. And I think we do need alliance representation in terms of the debates that will be happening on Brexit. So I've been a Brexit spokesperson for the party over the past 2 or 3 years. It's been an incredibly important role. We have had some influence, particularly with the European Commission and the Irish government. But apart from Sylvia Herman, we haven't had those Remain voices in the House of Commons. Now, obviously, we're seeing a situation where, with Boris Johnson going to have a majority, an outright majority in the House of Commons, and it's likely that he will proceed with his deal. But the deal is a bad one for Northern Ireland. There's a huge job of work to be done in terms of taking the rough edges off that and trying to make it work more smoothly. Insofar as that is possible, because it is still a bad deal and there's no such thing as a good Brexit, as we've been saying throughout the campaign. And there also is the future relationship. So these are, in many senses, existential questions for Northern Ireland. So it's important that I'm there as an alliance voice in Parliament, giving our unique perspective, that cross-community perspective from Northern Ireland, in terms of how we try to keep Northern Ireland together. Well, it's going to be some very difficult times, because I look to and see a situation where English nationalism's on the rise, but equally Scotland is very clear in terms of its determination to remain, as is Northern Ireland. So the Prime Minister doesn't really have the ability to push this ahead without regard to the implications for the entire UK, and I want to give voice to those concerns.
OK, Stephen, look, always good to talk to you. No doubt we will speak again as you make your way towards Westminster. By the way, David Ford cleared up for me. Sure. When I asked you earlier, were you thinking about writing that letter to the Assembly to say you might be moving on? That was before we knew how you were doing. He says you don't have to. You'll get a letter telling you you're out. You're toast as far as Stormont's concerned. So you can look out for that in the post.
Yes, I know. I've had a good 12 years there, so new challenge beckons.
New challenges indeed, fresh pastures. OK, Stephen, we'll let you go. Thanks very much indeed for that. Just a couple of updates. Colm Eastwood's been talking to my colleagues on BBC Radio Ulster in the last few moments, and he says that he will win Foyle, he believes, by thousands rather than hundreds. And he says South Belfast, that's Claire Hanna, looks like it is going to be enormous and fantastic. A sort of Trumpian sound to it. It's going to be enormous. It's going to be fantastic. But anyway, that's what Colm Eastwood had to say about those 2 seats. So it looks like the SDLP could be going back with 2 seats, having lost 3 last time round. Let's go up and check a few numbers with Mark Devonport, because we're now starting to get something that Mark and Nicholas can get their teeth into.
Yeah, I mean, we think it's enormous and fantastic, and that is not a political statement. We just want to have some numbers to actually start analysing, and we have 2 constituencies for the price of 1. Yep. Let's look here, Nicholas, at North Down. Obviously, we've seen Stephen Farry in the lead there. That's a higher number of votes than Lady Sylvia Herman got last time round when the DUP ran her close.
Indeed, and so we see that Alliance, who of course also stood last time around, have taken on the great majority of the votes that went to Sylvia Herman. And
let's just have a quick look at the proportion of the votes they got. 45.2% there, significantly above the DUP.
I think that may be the highest percentage vote Alliance has ever got in a parliamentary election.
And the change is going to be remarkable, because of course Alliance, a lot of their votes went to Sylvia Herman previously. So just let's have a quick look at the change. And there you see it, a 35.9% change.
I mean, this is nice. We're going to see a lot of records broken, but I think that may be the biggest single swing.
Now, it's maybe a bit overstated because, of course, although they fought the last election, a lot of their votes went to Sylvia Herman, but in council elections, obviously, they were more significant. The DUP just down very slightly there. And let's just have a quick look at the swing between Alliance and the DUP. Again, a pretty remarkable movement there, 18.1% of a swing.
Yeah, though, of course, this is artificial because of the absence of Lady Herman. I mean, the result was in line with the local council elections, if you allow for the fact that most of the Green voters would have been supporting Alliance this time around.
Okie doke. And then we got, as I say, 2 for the price of 1. We got Strangford, which was a DUP hold. There you see Jim Shannon holding on. But he had an 18,000 majority, I think, last time round. So Alliance, in the shape of Kelly Armstrong, has very much cut that back, hasn't she?
Yes, now from 18,000 down to just over 7.
Okie doke. And let's just have a look again at the proportions there.
Yeah.
So, still a very strong DUP seat, Strangford.
Yes,
there's no two ways about it.
But there's a second Alliance seat for the Assembly there.
And there's the Ulster Unionist down on only 10.7%. This was a seat that Lord Kilclooney, as he is now, John Taylor, as he was, held for a long time for the Ulster Unionists.
In fairness, that's only a whisker down from the Ulster Unionists. Rather poor result last time.
So there you go. We'll see the level of the change here. And as you say, just 0.7% down. But 14.8%, so it's almost like Alliance has really cut into the DUP vote there.
On the numbers, it looks exactly as if it was a straight transfer of voters from the DUP to Alliance, which is very interesting.
And here we go with the swing. It probably doesn't work that way, but it kind of works through there. They're 14.2% swing. Kelly Armstrong will be quite happy with that in terms of implications for future Assembly elections.
Well, so will her running mate be.
Indeed. OK, well, that's the position in North Down, and in terms of the other seats that we've been hearing, obviously we haven't got any firm figures, Nicholas, but what's the picture that you think is coming through now?
Actually, I've got a flash of results from West Tyrone, would you believe?
Oh, really? OK, well, bring it to us now if it's come up on your screen.
Well, what I'm getting here is that Orla Begley has held the seat, not very surprisingly.
No, not surprising at all there, very safe Sinn Féin seat.
But a massive improvement in the Alliance Party vote, up from 2.3% to almost 10%.
And obviously it was a truism previously that they were a greater Belfast party, so seeing them actually gathering votes in the likes of West Tyrone is a bit of a new development.
They're still in 4th place, but they're ahead of the Ulster Unionist Party, which, let's not forget, held that seat at Westminster when it was first created.
They took quite a lot of flack in the early part of this campaign for not cutting deals with other parties, but by standing in all 18 seats, they will therefore raise themselves in terms of the party ranking, won't they, overall?
And basically, you can't get votes where you don't stand a candidate.
OK. Well, there, on that truism, back to you in the studio, Mark.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. Mark and Nicholas looking very happy with themselves now that they have some numbers to get stuck into. Orla Begley there returned as MP for West Tyrone, as mentioned by Nicholas. No surprises. We'll have the detailed numbers for you in due course, of course. Hopefully we'll have some other declarations before too long. I'm going to come back to my panel. I think we're going to take some pictures of Jeremy Corbyn, and it doesn't look like he's had a particularly good night, it has to be said. We'll look at the body language there. How would we describe that? Stony-faced, talking, well, to himself, perhaps, as he walks along there. Phalanx of journalists taking photographs. It's a purposeful walk, it has to be said. If our poll is correct, he is down 71 seats with 191 and looking at being the leader of the opposition against a Prime Minister with a majority of 86. So you can understand, can't you, John Tong? Let's just talk about these. Well, they've gone. I was going to say we could talk over them. Maybe there'll be more in a moment or two. You can understand him putting a brave face on it at this stage. But it's not insignificant that John McDonnell, who's the Shadow Chancellor, and many people see as his right-hand man, many people talked about him as a possible alternative leader, suggesting we'll do the right thing as far as the leadership's concerned. And Angela Smith, Baroness Smith, suggesting it's an issue, obviously.
Jeremy Corbyn won't be leader of the opposition for much longer. I'd expect him to resign later this morning. The position's untenable.
Let's pause for a second. I'll come back to you. Let's hear from Naomi Long, the East Belfast candidate and Alliance leader. She's speaking live at the Count Centre.
And spoke to the old MP, which was also lovely. So I'm absolutely thrilled for Stephen. It could not happen to a nicer person, and I'm absolutely delighted for him. It's fantastic.
And it was one that people weren't really predicting that he would take that seat.
Well, we were, but nobody was listening. We thought that North Down was actually a much better prospect this time than East Belfast. So it was one of those ones where I think it was a slow burn for us, just below the radar. But we felt that there was a real opportunity, and I am so delighted for Stephen. I mean, he will make a fantastic MP, and I'm just really delighted for the party. But even aside from North Down, if you can put North Down aside, and I'm finding it hard at the minute, but the party has had a really good evening. So from my point of view, it's my birthday today, so this is quite a way to celebrate. I'm absolutely delighted.
And do you feel vindicated in standing in all constituencies at a time whenever so many other parties were having deals and pacts?
Well, look, regardless of the outcome, it was a party decision that we were going to contest every constituency. If you really believe in your values and your vision, elections are an opportunity for you to take those out to the public and to give them an opportunity to back you. I mean, tonight, for example, in places like West Tyrone, our vote has quadrupled since the last election there. So, I mean, that's an incredible result for Stephen Donnelly, and that puts him in contention for an Assembly seat next time around. So, you know, you've got to give people the opportunity to vote Alliance, because eventually, if they keep voting Alliance, they will get Alliance. The people in North Down have seen that tonight, and people, I think, in other parts of Northern Ireland already know that from experience in local government. So I'm delighted, and I think it was the right choice that we made. At the end of the day, I'm delighted if what we send back to Westminster are more Remain MPs, but we are facing a really dire situation in terms of the overall UK-wide perspective here, and I think we are right to be concerned about the future of Northern Ireland, so we have got to get in there and make our case together. The election's over, the count is still going on, but come, you know, tomorrow morning, the thing is, for those of us who are pro-Remain, who are concerned about a hard Brexit, we have got to get back around the table together and start doing what we've been doing consistently for the last 3 years, representing everybody in Northern Ireland and making sure that we don't end up as collateral damage in a Conservative Brexit.
And do you think you have votes from the Ulster Unionist Party? Are you looking to be in third place now across Northern Ireland?
Look, if you're asking me what my ambitions are, there's no ceiling on that. If we could have Alliance as the largest party in Northern Ireland, then I would be content that our job was done, because I believe that when Alliance is doing well, Northern Ireland is doing well. We want people to be able to live their lives free of the divisions that we have here. We want to build a united community. That's what we stand for in every election. This election was about Brexit, but Brexit for us is also a threat to our stability and to our ability to be able to live and work together in peace. We wanted to stand against it for that reason as much as any other. So look, it's hugely important for me, the growth that there's been across Northern Ireland. Kelly Armstrong has put in an absolutely storming result in a constituency where normally the DUP are weighing their votes in Strangford, and she's managed to reduce their majority there to 7,000. I don't think anybody would have predicted that. So it has been a really good night for the party. We've seen people who have been consistent on the ground doing the work actually being rewarded for it, and I'm hopeful for the future on that basis.
And are you hopeful that Stormont will get up and running again?
Well, look, if it doesn't, then the only losers are going to be the people who came out and voted today, who elected us to represent them. They have clearly said that what they want is a Stormont executive that can deliver for them. They were clear on the doorsteps that what worries them are issues like the health service and education, and we have a duty now to make it work. So I think all of the parties have been sent individual messages about it, and I think we now need to take those messages around the table, and we need to get back there. But we don't know what the situation will be on Monday. We don't know who the Secretary of State will be. But look, we're ready on Monday to go to talks. Whoever the Secretary of State is, we expect them to convene something on Monday, and we will be there. We will be constructive, and we will step up and play our part, because I don't believe that this is a sustainable way to live.
Naomi Long, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
The Alliance leader, Naomi Long, talking there to Tara, of course, who is down at that count for us in Titanic Centre. Everybody else was just watching as Tara did that interview, so good for her. Let's just pick up on that very briefly. John, Naomi Long clearly of the view that her strategy, well, she said it was the party strategy rather than hers personally, to run a candidate in every constituency, every one of the 18 constituencies, has been vindicated. She is about growing, it's not about individual seats necessarily, it's about growing the overall Alliance presence.
Correct, and it was the right strategy. Alliance are neither unionists nor nationalists, so why would they have electoral pacts with unionists or nationalists? It made perfect sense. It would have muddied Alliance's message had they had those pacts. Now, of course...
Could have misfired, just to be clear. It could have misfired, and some people said, you know, they needed to think long and hard about it because it could have backfired, for example, in North Belfast and in South Belfast.
But it would have been madness for Alliance. They've had this surge in council elections. They've had a great result in the European election. If anything would have stopped their momentum, it would have been having pacts. Now, people can say, well, hang on, in a Brexit election, surely Alliance were on a bound to go into pacts with Remain parties. But I don't think so. I think in terms of growing the party, this was the logical decision to do. Sometimes pacts can look like acts of weakness, and we saw the mess that other parties got in over pacts. But I mean, we saw Steve Aitken. He gave that interview to Sam McBride saying whatever happened, the UUP were going to stand in all 18 constituencies. And he got off on the wrong foot as party leader. He was unfortunate with the timing of the election, of course he was. But to get off on the wrong foot by saying no pacts at all, we stand as the UUP in every constituency, and having to row back from that was a really bad start. Alliance avoided that. They just said, no, we're comfortable in our own skin. We're a party that is neither unionist nor nationalist. We will always stand and contest every constituency. And you've got to go back to I know it was thrown at Alliance, you know, in the past they have stood down, but you've got to go back nearly 20 years. You've got to go back nearly 2 decades for it. So it was the right strategy, and it's been vindicated tonight. I suppose a slight disappointment for Naomi Long that she didn't, you know, join Stephen Farry in the House of Commons, but that was a big ask in East Belfast.
Yes, I guess she's got a job to do at the European Parliament for a period of time.
Yes.
But now, I would have thought before too long, time is going to be called on that by Boris Johnson. I mean, she's going to be looking to retake a seat at the Assembly, you'd have thought, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, she needs to be an Assembly presence. I mean, we're looking at an Assembly election almost certainly, you know, this spring, and then we'll see what the Alliance state of play is. Alliance could be a very big force in a reconstituted Assembly, given the marvellous year, let's face it, they've had in 2019, if they can sustain that momentum.
Quick thought on this, Deirdre?
Well, she has been vindicated, and I don't think you should underestimate the pressure that she came under. Now, maybe particularly on social media, and you could argue it's an echo chamber and you can't dismiss it, but a lot of people felt that they should have stood aside in key seats. They said no, they had to have a coherent message, they had to offer choice, and they stood by that, and as you say, it has worked for them. It could have backfired. She also raises an important point about the talks, and they're ready for the talks. We heard earlier Boris Johnson saying he's going to have a mini reshuffle earlier in the week. That may have implications for Northern Ireland in terms of the Secretary of State. Is it likely that Julian Smith will stay in this new right-wing cabinet? It seems unlikely. He has said he wants to stay. He has been engaged in his brief. He has been much better than his predecessor. You may say the bar was very low, but he has shown an interest in Northern Ireland. He has said that he wants to get the Assembly up and running. I think it would be very difficult if we're faced with another Secretary of State on Monday morning.
Mike, this is potentially, I just want to, we've touched on this, but I just want to, one last thought crosses my mind before we move on to talk about other things. What Alliance is doing, when you look at all of this, when you look at how Kelly Armstrong's performance and so forth, is it's building momentum for the next Assembly election. And if it's doing that now and taking votes off the Ulster Unionist Party at Westminster, it is likely to do precisely the same thing in the spring. And your Assembly presence could be further diminished.
Unless we learn the lesson and we start doing things differently.
You need to learn it very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I say, I'm going over old ground here, but we have a new leader, and he hasn't had the time. He's had one major speech, but the vision is progressive, and I support it, and I think we can move quickly.
Do you think the party will stick with him?
I think the mood in the party is to say, unless we reform ourselves pretty radically, we're going to continue in this downward spiral, and that's not acceptable. So it would be better to go out with a bang than to go out with a whimper. So I think Steve will go for the Big Bang Theory.
Better to not go out at all, I suppose, if you're an Ulster Unionist. I mean, the very fact that you're prepared to even countenance going out with a bang or a whimper is a big admission of defeat, is it not?
No, we have to be honest. We can't just say, grasp at straws here. Success for me was getting back into the House of Commons, and it looks like that has not happened. So we have to learn the lesson. We have to look at who's successful, why they're successful, and we have to analyse why we're not being successful at the moment.
And you have to differentiate. Now you're caught between a rock and a hard place, if you want to think of it that way. You need to clearly differentiate your position, mark out your place in the sand between the DUP and the Alliance Party and offer something unique, find a USP and explain to people why they should support it. You've signally failed to do any of the above.
I think that's possible. Well, I tried in 2017 and I didn't get sufficient support from the electorate to feel that I could continue as leader. Steve will do something in terms of defining a USP. I mean, I'm hearing he has very much enhanced our vote in East Antrim. So don't tell me he's not a popular guy. And don't tell me he's not an intelligent guy. He has life skills, and he will do something positive with the party.
You must have heard the people who say he may be a very nice guy and he's got good experience, but he's not necessarily the most natural and the most gifted politician we've ever come across. I mean, he's dropped the ball a couple of times in interviews and debates over the past 4 or 5 weeks.
I wasn't a career politician and I dropped the ball, but do you know what? It's not the getting knocked down. It's how you get up that counts.
And you think he'll get back up?
Yeah.
Okay. Carl, we haven't heard from you for a little while. What's the latest you're hearing?
I think I'm not surprised by Stephen Farry's election this evening, and I think that I lived in North Down for a while, a couple of years ago. We pulled out of there to support who we thought was Lily Sylvia, but then Alliance, and I think it's
you happy enough that SDLP voters in North Down probably backed Stephen Farry?
Well, they didn't vote for the DUP and they didn't vote for the UUP, whose position on Brexit is all over.
So if they came out, they probably voted for Dr. Farry?
I think they probably did come out and they would have voted for Stephen Farry, yeah. So what am I hearing? I'm hearing that Claire Hannon's going to take South Belfast with a huge majority. I think the economist would have said. And we haven't had much chat about South Down tonight, but I think that
so have you heard anything about that?
Just, neck and neck is what I'm hearing, but
really?
I'm not making any calls or any pledges there, but yeah, I'm hearing that it's tight enough. So after this, I'm going to go down to the council. I'll send you a text.
Yes. Well, do send me a text, but get onto your WhatsApp group there and get some numbers for us, please.
Well, no, I've already been criticised by my family watching me, saying you're looking at your phone too much.
Oh, no, but that's okay. We, as long as you're not playing some sort of game that I don't approve of, you're allowed to do that. So get some South Down info for us. A bit of intel would be very good. John?
Well, that'd be extraordinary if Sinn Féin was to lose South Down. I mean, Chris Hazard is one of their main stars. It would be a real scalp for the SDLP, which no one was really anticipating, even though, it's 2017, Sinn Féin had come from a long way back to actually take that seat.
And speaking of Sinn Féin, let's just look at these live pictures now. John Finucane, Mary Lou and Michelle O'Neill arriving at the Count Centre, and Tara's talking to him.
I think it continues on from the message that we've been given for the last 6 weeks in North Belfast. It's been really well received. I've said to any journalist really who's been talking to me over the past number of weeks that there hasn't been a day where the message that we've been given has been received so well by everybody, and certainly been received so well by those who have stretched themselves to vote today, and I'm very grateful for that. I think that obviously we're waiting on the official result, but as I say, it has been an exceptionally positive 6 weeks, I think.
Does it make the victory sweeter that it's Nigel Dodds who you've beaten?
No, I think I don't think this is about personalities at all. I think this is about something bigger. This is about a threat that was posed to North Belfast and indeed this island in the form of Brexit. I think that's what it was about for me. That was really the core of our message over the last 6 weeks, and that ultimately I think is what has been received so well right across the doors in North Belfast.
And it's quite a significant majority, really beyond what anybody was predicting.
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen that level of detail yet. Well, I think we all know it's difficult to call things in politics over the last few years, but as I say, all we did was focus on the message that we had. I think that it's been a really positive, energetic 6 weeks. It's been a positive campaign, and I want to thank everybody who has come out to canvass for me, to support me, particularly my family, and also particularly every single person who came out to put an X beside my name today in North Belfast.
What does this mean to you personally, given what happened to your father?
Well, it's I suppose that's something that is always with me, whether I'm in politics or not. And I think this has already been a big year for me, being Mayor of Belfast. I was very proud to be installed into that role. I think I think my family will obviously be very proud if the indications prove correct. But I think I'm focused on what I've been saying, which is that I want to represent everybody in North Belfast. I grew up there, I live there, I raised my kids there. I feel very strongly about North Belfast. I tell anybody who listens that it's the best part of Belfast. So I think that's the focus for me, really.
Are you grateful to the SDLP for stepping aside?
I'm grateful to everybody who voted for me, and I didn't say it lightly. For me, it was an election that transcended party politics, and I think we've seen that in other constituencies as well. So there were many people from all shades who voted for me in this election, and I'm very grateful for that.
John Finucane, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, folks. We'll make that everyone will be.
There you go. Tara again doing her thing with the big name arrivals at the Titanic Centre. That was John Finucane, of course, Sinn Féin's North Belfast candidate. Sinn Féin now openly, apparently, according to some of my colleagues on the ground there, predicting that John Finucane has won that seat with 1,000 plus votes in terms of a majority. We're going to go to John Campbell in a moment or two. Before we do that, he's still at number 10, as I understand it. Carl White, right decision by the SDLP to stand aside in North Belfast?
We've been very clear that John Finucane, and John is a classmate of mine from school and a council colleague, so I congratulate him on his victory. But our message has been that it's better that John sits at home than having Nigel Dodds sitting in the House of Commons, and that's the result tonight. And he has delivered a result from across the community in North Belfast. There's no doubt about that. And congratulations to him.
Okay, a quick word from you, Edwin, on that. That is bad news. I mean, everybody seems to accept now John Finucane will take that seat. That's, as we've said earlier, and it's worth repeating, not good.
No, it's not good news for the DUP. It's not good news for Parliament. Nigel Dodds was an excellent parliamentarian.
I'm going to pause you 1 second because your colleague Emma Little-Pengelly is talking to Tara. Let's hear what she has to say.
We give it a really, really, really good push. I had a fantastic team behind me, so many volunteers. They've been absolutely amazing. So, not a big surprise possibly coming, but we'll keep going.
Are you disappointed personally?
Well, there hasn't been a declaration yet, so we'll come in and see the team. But as I've said, there's no big surprises here. It was always going to be very, very difficult in South Belfast because of the PACs, because of Sinn Féin and the Greens pulling out. But as I've said, we give it a fantastic fight, and the team has worked absolutely amazingly.
What about the bigger picture for the DUP? It's not been a great night. We've just heard from John Finucane. It hasn't been declared, but it's pretty much been called by everybody that Nigel Dodds has lost his seat.
Well, as I said, I've just arrived, so I'm about to go in and see my team. So I don't know anything about that, so I'm going to go in and speak to them. So all the best.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
There you go, Emma Little-Pengelly, not giving too much away, but I suppose all but conceding South Belfast there, Edwin. She said no big surprises. It was very difficult. We gave it our best shot. She knows she's not going to win.
No, she's not. And Emma came through the middle the last time round. It was a seat that has been held by the SDLP for the 3 previous elections. And given the other parties pulling out in support of the SDLP, it isn't a shock that we lost South Belfast.
We're hearing, and it's not confirmed, but we're hearing that it could well be a thumping majority for Claire Hanna. So, it's possible, who knows until we see the numbers, but it could be that Claire Hanna was going to take that seat anyway.
Yeah, well, I understand she's probably up around 20,000 votes, a bit more. So it is a very good vote. Emma Pengelly has represented that constituency very, very well in her 3 years.
Hard for her, though, because it's a big Remain constituency.
It is, yes, and she's a very, very capable young woman, and she has a great future in politics.
Let's see if Tara. Sorry, Edwin, to interrupt you again, but Diane Dodds, Nigel Dodds, and Arlene Foster arriving at the Count Centre. See Stephen Walker, my colleague there, speaking to Arlene Foster.
And obviously, congratulations
let's just listen in.
for taking the seat. Pleased to see Alex's votes increasing again.
Because you thought you would take North Down.
Well, we worked very hard to take North Down, but obviously it wasn't to be, and Stephen has taken North Down. I congratulate him on that.
And disappointment in North Belfast with John Finucane taking the seat?
Well, it's not just disappointment. I am absolutely very disappointed, not just for North Belfast, but actually for Northern Ireland, that they're losing such a great advocate in Nigel Dodds. And, they're having somebody who's not even going to go to Westminster and speak up for Northern Ireland now, but that has been the decision, and of course I respect the demography.
Why do you think you lost North Belfast?
Well, I think it's very clear the demography just wasn't there. We worked very, very hard to get the vote out, and I think that's been very clear over this past 5 to 6 weeks. But the demography was against it, and of course the SDLP decided not to run, and I think that has shown that the Pan-Nationalist Front has come to fruition again in North Belfast, as it did in Fermanagh and South Tyrone.
And to lose Emma Little-Pengelly, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we'll wait and see what the result is in South Belfast. Thank you very
So Arlene Foster talking to Stephen Walker there and evoking the memory of the Pan-Nationalist Front. She says that's...
disgraceful language. It's not a Pan-Nationalist Front. We had support from the Green Party in South Belfast. And using terms like that hark back to an era which we put behind us is, frankly, it's beneath Arlene Foster.
Well, you could say, of course, it was a pan-unionist front
for decades.
South Tyrone.
For decades across lots
Edwin,
of
do you think that's the
constituencies.
kind of language that Arlene Foster should be employing on an occasion like this?
Well, I would say it's factual language in terms of the arrangement that we had in Fermanagh, South Tyrone and North Belfast. It was to provide people with representation at Westminster. So there was a distinct possibility where someone could actually get elected who would actually take their seats in Westminster.
Yeah.
And
Well, it gets us back to the
that's what
abstentionist
happened in
debate,
those
which
two
you're never
constituencies.
going to agree with Sinn Féin on that. And the SDLP made it very clear that they had to seriously, hold their noses to support that situation in North Belfast. And Colm Eastwood said, at the end of the day, people understand, he would rather have nobody in the seat than Nigel Dodds in the seat. But he wasn't happy about the fact that John Finucane is not going to take his seat.
No, it's pretty poor form, in my opinion, that they chose to pull out in that circumstance. And I think the main thing is purely a mask, and it is nationalism coming together to try to gang up on the DUP in particular and unionism in general.
No, I think we need a discussion about what representation means. Edmund has already discussed that Emma Littlepin-Kelly came through the middle because of a split vote, that he suggests that she represented the people very well, yet it's one of the most pro-Remain constituencies in the UK. So she wasn't reflecting the views of the people that live there. This is not a pan-nationalist front. I don't know why you can be appalled that unionists have pacts, and when people come together in circumstances that transcend party politics, Brexit being an existential threat, the people come together to say, we support Remain, the majority of people in Northern Ireland supported Remain, and we simply want to have the opportunity to reflect that. I don't know why you would dismiss that in such a way. I think perhaps the issue here is the DUP are in a crisis of leadership. When you look at Nigel Dodds, that's a huge scalp and it's a huge psychological blow for the party. He has been the chief architect of
Maybe
Brexit.
he'll just come back to Stormont and play a meaningful role in the Stormont team.
And would Arlene not now want to be reflecting on her leadership and how they have ended up in this position?
Would she, Edwin?
I don't believe so, no.
You don't think there are any serious questions for her to be
Well,
considering at this stage? If she goes back 2 seats down, having made the case for going back 1 seat up?
Well, we had a very powerful result the last time, an exceptional result, a higher result than the DUP had ever achieved in any previous election.
So it was a freak result, was it?
It was a result that was driven by events that had happened previously in that year, and I don't think anybody can deny it. There was the 2017 Assembly election. Gerry Adams came out and done a lot of bragging thereafter, and unionists were going to make sure that that wasn't going to happen again. Things have calmed down a lot again, and there wasn't that same impetus in the unionist community. There was a lot of anger about the Assembly not carrying on. There's a lot of anger about the health service and other issues that people want us to be dealing with. So there's a bit of a protest there, and some of our candidates are feeling the brunt of that.
I just want to go back to Carl because we moved in a slightly different direction. You were annoyed at Arlene Foster's use of the term pan-nationalist front. And I just wonder to what extent you were uncomfortable about stepping aside in North Belfast and in the knowledge that John Finucane will not take his seat and the people of North Belfast will not have anyone speaking up for them in the House of Commons chamber. And that was the whole raison d'etre for Colm Eastwood's campaign in Foyle to say you actually need someone who's not an abstentionist to represent you. Now, if that's not mixed messaging, I don't know what is.
Well, no, we're talking about representation. What's actually happened is the DUP have misrepresented the majority of people who live in Northern Ireland. And what Edwin has said there about this being a pan-nationalist front or sectarian pact is complete nonsense. We never did this before. We've never done it. The unionism has done it for many years. Why we did it this time was because the Remain result was being ignored in the House of Commons, and the Remain majority in Northern Ireland needed a vote there. Of course, it's completely against the SDLP's instincts. We've won seats, we've represented, we've taken our seats at Westminster for decades. It was a very difficult decision.
And for years, Carl, stalwarts of the SDLP stood against Sinn Féin candidates, particularly in North Belfast, you know, in the really dark days of the Troubles, and said,
and sorry, Mark,
this is the way
Mark,
nationalism should go, not that way. But this time, you stepped aside.
We continue to stand aside Sinn Féin candidates right across Northern Ireland. Here's why we made the decision we did in North Belfast and North Down and East Belfast. Nigel Dodds is damaging to the national interest if you're British, if you're Irish, if you're Northern Irish, whatever way you see yourself as. Because he is one of the architects of a Brexit that is being forced upon us, that no economist, there's no one even selling Brexit now, the benefits of it.
Boris Edwin is. Edwin did earlier.
Tremendous opportunity. I'd like Edwin to outline that, because even Boris Johnson...
But he did earlier.
Boris Johnson, I wasn't here, I didn't hear that. Boris Johnson is not talking about the benefits of Brexit. He's saying, let's just get it done, like it's tidying your house.
Well, I don't want to go back to the Brexit debate again. Well, what I wanted to just ask, hang on 1 second, what I did want to say to you was, if politics is about perception, and the perception of certainly some, if not many, within the unionist community, and certainly the leader of the DUP, which continues to be the biggest unionist party, is that what we're looking at, what we're witnessing, what we've seen in North Belfast is, to quote her, the resurrection of the Pan-Nationalist Front. That's a phrase I haven't heard for quite some time. Being discussed around this table tonight.
We can take full offence.
But I want Carl to respond to that. That's the perception of unionists.
This is not full offence. This was a term used in the early 90s by loyalist paramilitaries to describe...
Well, Arlene Foster's just used it again.
And that's why I criticised it, and I called it out straight away. There are unionists voting for the SDLP across Northern Ireland. We're in the position now, and we're making this mistake, and the media make the mistake, where we perceive the DUP as representing all unionists and all unionist voters. The fact is that they don't. They've been ignored by the DUP.
I don't think anybody... not too many people in the media are making that mistake.
I think it was actually an MP caption, not loyalist paramilitaries. But I would say this. SDLP have stood aside, and we hear this full offence, but they have stood aside in North Belfast.
And East Belfast and North Down.
Yeah, well, what you do in those constituencies is a different matter, but in North Belfast, you stood aside for a gentleman who could not condemn the murder attempt on Nigel Dodds, which was 23 years ago, a couple of days from 23 years ago, where a bullet was put into an incubator, where a policeman was injured in the process. He couldn't condemn that.
Well, what he said was, and I don't want to get into that.
But you're happy for your people to vote for him.
Not here. What he said was he's not interested in selective condemnation. And remember, just worth bearing in mind.
He was happy to condemn posters.
This is a man whose father was murdered in his own house
and we
when John Finucane was a child.
No issue whatsoever in saying the murder of Pat Finucane was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. But John Finucane cannot step up to the plate and say the attempted murder of Nigel Dodds in a hospital where he was visiting a sick child and a bullet was put into an incubator, that he can't condemn that, but he can condemn posters.
We just saw pictures there of Paul Maskey, who's been returned as the Sinn Féin MP for West Belfast, and that's certainly not a surprise to anybody. Mike, I just wonder how uncomfortable you are sitting listening to this conversation. You outlined your rationale for being happy at the election of Colm Eastwood, if that's what happens, and happy about the election of Claire Hanna, if that's what happens, and pleased to see Stephen Farry returned in North Down as well. And then when you hear Arlene Foster, who was a leadership figure within unionism at the same time as you a few years ago, using the phrase Pan-Nationalist Front. That is the absolute antithesis of where you are tonight.
And it's not my analysis, and I've heard Edwin talk about parties ganging up on the DUP. I think he's used that expression twice this evening, and I don't think that is what has been happening here. I think what is happening is transcending the orange and green, and is about Remain or Leave, or Brexit. And this is, as I've said, an existential threat to the future of Northern Ireland. It's absolutely critical to those who define their identity as more than a binary of British or Irish, nationalists or unionists.
Apparently disagree with you than agree with you, because more unionists are voting for the DUP than the Ulster Unionist Party. So, when Edwin Poots says that's not right, his analysis is shared by more within the unionist family than yours is.
That's a fact. Mike doesn't speak for unionism.
No, and I don't think anybody speaks for unionism, although I accept that Arlene Foster and Edwin and the DUP are the majority political unionist
They speak
party.
for more unionists.
They speak for more, yes, and I accept that. But that doesn't mean I can't have my analysis and that I have a duty to say, here's what I think.
No, it doesn't mean that. It just puts you in a very, very awkward space.
Well, politically it might put me in an awkward space, but I didn't get into politics to have an easy ride. This is what I believe, and I will stand by it. And I think one of the big issues that we tend to ignore is the impact of Brexit on people's sense of identity. I think a lot of nationalists define themselves as Irish and European, the same as everybody on the other side of the border, and therefore there is no border of the minds, until Brexit came along. And what they believe has happened is that English nationalists have reached in over their heads, denied them their sense of Europeanness, and that's exactly what the Belfast Agreement said couldn't happen, because the Belfast Agreement says you and only you define your own identity. And that's where I think the big problem is, beyond the border or trade or tariffs or the economics. It's about identity.
John, I want to bring you in at this point. You've written 2 books on unionism, one on the Ulster Unionist Party, one on the Democratic Unionist Party. Strikes me that very often the notion of unionist unity raises its head in this part of the world. It's not up for discussion tonight, that's for sure.
It's not going to happen if it's left to the members. There's only 15% of Ulster Unionist Party members want a merger with the DUP. So Ulster Unionist Party members will carry on. Now, to what purpose? It can be reasonably asked tonight, because the UUP is not heading back to Westminster. They'll probably struggle in the next Assembly election. And you do ask the question, whether the future of the UUP, because Alliance is stealing that Liberal Unionist vote from the party. But on the plus side for the UUP, it's still got a large membership. Its members do still feel distinctive from the DUP. There's no love lost between UUP members and DUP members. But in terms of UUP voters, they're clearly receptive, some of them at least, to the messages that are now coming from Alliance. In terms of the broader thing about the label of pan-nationalist, I accept Carl's point. Yes, it's used as a negative label. I think that pact in North Belfast was a pan-nationalist pact in some ways. Remain was used as something of a camouflage for it, but there were elements of both within it.
I just want to pause 1 second, hold that thought. Francie Malloy, they're being embraced by party supporters, party workers, Mid-Ulster. I think he's been formally returned at this stage. He's been an MP, of course, since 2013. So his declaration has taken place and he is home safely as the MP. North Belfast, we gather, is imminent. We'll bring you confirmation of the numbers from Mid-Ulster in due course. We think that North Belfast is coming our way very soon as well. Sorry to interrupt you, John, but I just wanted to explain to people what they were looking at there in case they weren't absolutely sure. Off you go again. Can you pick up exactly where you were?
Yeah, exactly. In terms of North Belfast, Steve Aitken was on a hiding to nothing there, because if he actually fielded a candidate tonight, no doubt he'd be blamed by some unionists for the demise of Nigel Dodds, when actually, as we've seen tonight, when the UUP stands aside, Nigel Dodds has lost anyway. But there's no doubt in my mind that Steve Aitken would have been blamed for that defeat. So what could he do? The problem was that he'd committed to fielding these 18 candidates. I think that pacts aren't the way to go. I mean, in terms of party identity, they're simply not the way forward at all. If parties want an independent identity,
okay, let's cross over to North Belfast, where the declaration is taking place. Let's take it live.
425, 49425. The valid vote was 49,037, 49037. Invalid votes 388, 388. Percentage turnout was 68.43%. I, Stephen McCrory, as the Deputy Returning Officer for the Belfast North constituency, hereby declare that at the election the number of votes for each candidate was as follows: Dodds Nigel, Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, 21,135, 21135. Finucane John, Sinn Féin, 23,078. That's 23078. McAllister Nuala, Alliance Party, 4,824, 4824. I declare that John Finucane is returned to serve in Parliament for the Belfast North constituency. Thank you.
So, John Finucane celebrating his victory there in North Belfast. He's defeated the DUP incumbent, Nigel Dodds, who is, of course, the party's deputy leader and leader at Westminster, by, I make that a majority of 1,940 votes. Am I right? Yes?
Yeah.
Almost 2,000. And we'd heard he was going to do it by over 1,000. He did it by significantly more than that. John, just a quick thought on that margin and the significance of what has just happened?
A bigger margin than I expected. It was always going to be a close call. The bookmakers couldn't split it. They kept changing their minds over it. Devastating blow to the DUP. Nigel Dodds represented one of the, if not the biggest brain within the party, formidable speaker at Westminster. Very, very difficult to replace. And obviously the question begged now.
John Finucane speaking. Let's hear what he has to say.
This is exceptionally surreal and momentous for me personally, but I think this is a huge day, a huge night for North Belfast. I want to start off by paying thanks to all of those who supported me. I want to start off with everybody who's in front of me, those who canvassed, those who supported me over the past 6 weeks in what was a very long but a very positive campaign. I want to pay particular tribute as well to my family, to my children, but also my mother. I know this means a lot for her personally, especially in a year when I was very fortunate to be installed as mayor of this city. And I will hopefully ask your forgiveness for the personal indulgence that on a night like tonight, when it is all still very surreal, that I can't help but think of my father and where we have come from, not just as a family, but as a society as well. I want to thank each and every person who came out to vote for me today in North Belfast. And I also want to acknowledge here tonight that there were those who stretched themselves. And I know that this election was an election that transcended party politics. And I know that I was very much the beneficiary of that today. And I think the reason for that is that this election was fought very much on a very positive campaign from our party from the get-go. North Belfast, as I said, coming into the centre tonight, and I hope Paul Maskey forgives me, North Belfast is easily the best part of Belfast. I was born there, I raised my kids there, I live there now. I'm very, very proud to be from North Belfast, and I think that this election is about the future of North Belfast. We saw the threat of Brexit and what that meant for the people of Belfast. We saw the threat to our economy, the threat to our children's futures, and I think that message, that Remain voice that was heard in 2016 was amplified beyond recognition again tonight. I said to those on the doors for the past 6 weeks that this election had the potential to be a voice that would be heard loud and clear, not just in North Belfast, but in Belfast, in Ireland and in Europe, and indeed right across the world. And I think that message has been heard very loudly here tonight. We have taken the opportunity to say once again, without any equivocation, North Belfast rejects Brexit. North Belfast is a Remain constituency. North Belfast wants a future as part of the European Union, and I think that is hugely significant. I also want to pay tribute to the fact that, or acknowledge the fact that there are many other issues in North Belfast that I want to work and help towards solving with so many other different people in North Belfast. This week has shown us once again, sadly, that we have a mental health crisis. We are a constituency that suffers unfairly from suicide. We have a housing crisis, and we have areas of high economic and social deprivation. As an MP, I pledge to you all tonight, without any fear of contradiction, that I will work for every single person in this constituency, whether you voted for me today or not. I pledge to do my best for North Belfast, because I will finish as I started. It is the best part of Belfast, and we have a very exciting future ahead. Thank you very much, everybody who voted for me. Go to Amelia Mailwood.
So, significant applause there for John Finucane making his speech. Presumably we'll hear from Nigel Dodds, who's just lost his North Belfast seat any moment. His majority in 2017 of 2,081, now Sinn Féin majority of 1,940. Here's Mr. Dodds.
I want to thank the emergency service security forces for keeping us safe during that election. And I also want to thank the 21,000 people who voted for the Democratic Unionist Party and myself. I want to pay tribute and thank the people of North Belfast for giving me the great honour over the last 18 and a half years to represent them in the House of Commons at Westminster, to take my seat and be a voice to try to deliver for them across a range of issues. And I'm particularly proud of the role that we played in delivering that extra resources for mental health, for housing, for jobs and investment in recent years. And whilst no acknowledgement has been made of that or of our role over that period by the new MP, I want to say I congratulate him on his victory. I do regret the fact that North Belfast, however, will be left unrepresented in the House of Commons at a very challenging time. I think one of the messages of this election is that people want to have their voice heard in Westminster at a critical time when there are so many challenges for North Belfast, for Northern Ireland and for our country as a whole. And I want to say this as far as Brexit is concerned. It's very clear now that Brexit is going to happen with Boris Johnson's predicted majority. And it's very, very important that the Northern Ireland Assembly is got up and running as quickly as possible so that the Northern Ireland Executive and politicians here can have a role in that going forward. But Boris Johnson needs to understand that we must have a Brexit that ensures that it protects the integrity of the United Kingdom and is the best deal for Northern Ireland, and that is something that we will continue to work with the government on in the days ahead. So I want to really end by thanking my family, by thanking the great team of workers, canvassers, party activists, party members, that people outside our party who have worked so hard in this election and over many years in an increasingly difficult and tightly fought constituency, and we always recognised that, and as has already been acknowledged, the particular circumstances of this election where people were not necessarily voting on party lines on some cases. But I want to acknowledge the fantastic work, and I don't want to name individuals here tonight because it would be invidious to do so and I'd leave somebody out, but I do want to pay tribute to them for their great help and assistance. So I look forward to continuing to serve in whatever capacity the people see fit going forward. It's been my great honour, as I say, to have fulfilled this role for so long, and I continue to wish and work for the very best for North Belfast, for Northern Ireland, and for this great country of ours and all our communities. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
So Nigel Dodds, I suppose, making his concession speech. He lost the seat. It was his 2 years ago, being embraced by his party leader, Arlene Foster, who said on her way in she'd be very disappointed if Nigel Dodds didn't take that seat. There's his wife, Diane Dodds, getting a warm embrace from him, and other members of his family and supporters also commiserating with him. That will be a big blow to him, Edwin puts. He said he will do whatever comes his way in terms of representing people in future. He's 61. Is that the last we've seen of him, or do you expect him to come back to Stormont?
I don't know what Nigel will want to do. That's a matter for Nigel. He would be a great asset to come back to Stormont. He has previous ministerial experience. He is hugely skilled, a great parliamentarian, very knowledgeable in legislation, good negotiator. An awful shame that he's lost his seat, and that is very damaging for unionism that he has, and that is why Sinn Féin targeted him in such a way.
He's talking there to Sammy Wilson, and I just saw my colleague Tara Mills pursuing him there with the press corps, obviously hoping that he's going to turn around and have a conversation with her. I saw Philip Brett, who's fairly tall and substantial, putting himself between Nigel Dodds and Tara. I have no idea if that was deliberate or not, but anyway, it doesn't seem that Nigel wants to talk to Tara just at the moment. Maybe he will, but it's a difficult one for him. East Belfast Declaration is coming, so before I hear more from the panel, let's just cross over and get the details of that. We are, here we go.
Returning officer for the Belfast East constituency hereby declare that at the election the number of votes for each candidate was as follows. Long Naomi, Alliance Party, 19,055, 19055. McLean, Carl Christian, also Unionist Party, 2,516, 2516. Robinson, Gavin, Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, 20,874. That's 20874. I declare that Gavin Robinson is returned to serve in Parliament for the Belfast East constituency. Thank you.
Gavin Robinson, who's won that seat, he's making his way, I think, to the podium, and we'll hear what he has to say. He'll be relieved, but his majority is
Deputy
well
Returning Officer,
cut down.
Can I firstly thank you and your staff for the way in which this election has been conducted and this count. It is a huge privilege to stand here again, elected as the Member of Parliament for East Belfast. And I can't do that without thanking my amazing team within my office, my family, and the proud and positive way in which we have campaigned over the last 6 weeks. And can I also say how proud it has been for me to stand alongside and to work alongside two of the finest representatives Belfast has had over the last number of years. It has been a huge privilege, and I will miss them. I will miss them, and Westminster will miss them. Can I pay tribute, Mr. Deputy Returning Officer, to Naomi and to Carl. I don't know Carl. I haven't had the chance to meet him yet. I'm hoping to do that tonight. But I think all of us have had a campaign which has been positive in East Belfast from our three parties. We haven't bumped into one another, but we stood strong for our own messages. We stood strong for what we believe in, and from my perspective, it has been a privilege to stand for a party which published not only a manifesto in this election, but a Northern Ireland plan. A Northern Ireland plan that outlines not only the challenges that we face as a society, but the job in hand we have to put them right. And as a party, on the doors, across the constituency and across the province, our message of getting Northern Ireland moving again has resonated. That is our challenge, be it at Westminster, Stormont, across this province. We have a job of work to do. Let's get on. Let's get Northern Ireland moving forward again. Let's do it.
So there you go. Gavin Robinson had a majority of 8,474 2 years ago. It's down to 1,819. So he's held the seat, but he's held it with a much reduced majority. Let's go to Fermanagh South Tyrone, the count there, and talk to Tom Elliott, who is, of course, the Ulster Unionist candidate. The DUP stood aside. 875 votes divided you from Michelle Gildernew 2 years ago, Mr. Elliott, and I gather it's too close to call at this stage. What are you hearing?
It is close. They're still opening boxes, would you believe it? And maybe they've them all open by now, but it is too close to call, and I think everybody's saying that. No matter what team's there, they're all saying that this is going to be another nail-biter, and you know we're not going to know probably for another hour.
Are you hopeful at this stage? You live in hope, do you?
Like you do, Mark, and you just don't know. Fermanagh South Tyrone's always unpredictable. It's always tight. All you can do is run a campaign that you think is reasonable to the electorate of the area, and I suppose hope that some people will vote for you that maybe didn't traditionally vote for you. And so it is too close, and all the parties are saying that at the moment. They just can't predict it at this stage. So when they can't do it, Mark, those are the guys that do the number crunching. I can't predict it, so that's where we are here in Fermanagh and South Tyrone.
Well, of course, it came down to 4 votes, didn't it, controversially, in 2010. It looks like at the moment you're flying the flag for the Ulster Unionist Party because you're not having a great night elsewhere, it has to be said. As you say, Fermanagh South Tyrone is perhaps electorally a place apart.
Yes, it is, and you know, sometimes it throws up unusual results, just as we have seen in other constituencies this evening. Mark, there are unusual results coming forward, and you know, I am disappointed to see Nigel Dodds. He's from a different political party, but I'm disappointed to see Nigel lose his seat. He's a great parliamentarian. He has been effective in Westminster, and it's unfortunate for him personally, but also for Northern Ireland, because I think he did contribute to Northern Ireland generally. So that's, I think, almost unfair on him. But that's politics, you know, you get into it, and that's how it goes. Obviously, the North Down one, I think, wasn't predicted by most people, and, you know, we just don't know what's going to happen here in Fermanagh and South Tyrone.
Okay, well, you keep your ear to the ground, and we'll talk to you in due course either way, if that's all right. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us in the meantime. Tom Elliott, the Ulster Unionist candidate in Fermanagh, South Tyrone. Too close to call. Nobody's making any predictions there at the moment. Let's go to Enda McLafferty, who's in Magherafelt with a couple of well-known SDLP faces. Are they feeling pretty chipper about the way things are going, Enda?
Yes, I think you can say that, Mark. Pretty pleased with their night's work, because although he hasn't been declared yet, he hasn't been formally elected yet, you're looking at the next MP for Foyle standing beside a previous MP for Foyle. And Colm Eastwood, how have you managed to pull this off? Because 2.5 years ago, things were looking very different for your party.
Well, we made a very clear decision to get organised and to speak to people right across the constituency and work very hard on the ground. We worked very, very hard to win the council elections just this year, and we worked towards this. But look, this isn't about us, to be honest. This is actually about the people out there who are roaring now that they want Stormont to come back, that they want the health service fixed, that they want the cuts to our education budget stopped, and they want people to get back to work and do those things. That's what we heard on every single door, and I hope that the DUP and Sinn Féin have heard that as well.
So this wasn't about Westminster then, this was about Stormont, is that what you're saying?
It was about lots of things. People really wanted representation in Westminster as well. I think we've been starved of representation both in Stormont and Westminster for the past couple of years, and I think that's been a real shame. And the people of Derry have spoken very, very loudly today, I think, in making that point very clear. So look, there's a lot of work to do, but what we have to do now is take the lessons of this election, bring it into the talks process, and not miss this opportunity, because we cannot leave people without a government for any longer.
You look as if you're going to be taking the seat in South Belfast as well, going back to Westminster with 2 MPs. Do you also take any pleasure in the fact that you had a pretty big hand in dislodging Nigel Dodds, DUP, in North Belfast?
Well, look, we made a decision at the beginning of this election campaign to try to get as many Remainers elected to Westminster as possible, but also to make sure that there was as few leavers as possible in Westminster, and that's why we did that. And I think that's because the people of North Belfast wanted us to do that, and the people of North Belfast have spoken, and I think they've spoken very clearly. So, but what we have to do now is listen to what the public have said. I think sometimes we listen just after an election, and then we forget what the people were telling us. We need to get back to work in Stormont. We need to go to Westminster to try to protect us from Boris Johnson, but we also need to get back at work at Stormont, and there's an opportunity, there's a window opening now in the next few days to begin to do that.
Of course, you framed your election campaign very much around stopping Boris Johnson and stopping Brexit. That, going by the exit polls, is going to be impossible to do, because his hand is going to be strengthened to such an extent that he'll be able to do what he wants.
Well, the people of England, have made that decision. What you've seen in Scotland and what you're seeing here is people who are very, very clearly and very, very loudly saying that they want to remain in the European Union. We'll see what happens after Christmas with all of that. But what we have to do is protect ourselves here, protect ourselves from a hard border, protect ourselves from a no-deal exit. Because I think what is actually going to happen in the next year, if Boris Johnson is saying that he has to have this trade deal done within a year, which everybody says is impossible, we have to recognise that we're up against a no-deal exit at that point. So there's many, many arguments to be had, many, many things to be done in Westminster, and we'll be there to do it.
Mark Durkan, how are you feeling tonight, given the fact that you lost this seat by just 169 votes?
Yes, I did, and I said at the time that it hurt. It's a delight to be here tonight to see Colm win this seat handsomely, which I think is what's going to happen. But as Colm says, it's not just about him, it's not just about the SDLP. Just as when I lost the seat, it wasn't just about me. The city lost something, that people in the city have realised that they lost representation cumulatively with the Assembly down, and no voice at Westminster whenever key decisions were being made around Brexit. So this is a vote for representation, and a vote for very good representation by what seems to be a very strong vote for a very good candidate. And we heard on all the doorsteps, people want to see the Assembly back, and they want the North-South Ministerial Council up and running as well as the Executive, because that's going to have a role in dealing with Brexit. But people also, I think, know that there is a job of work to be done at Westminster. It's not going to be easy. It was easy for people to stand outside Westminster. Colm's not going to have an easy job inside Westminster, given the strength of the ERG and Boris, but he is fit for that task, and that's why the people of Derry have given him that mandate.
Of course, the pressure's going to come on now for Colm to deliver on the promises and the pledges that he made throughout the campaign.
Yes, but people know that Colm has been honest on all of the issues, all of the hard questions that he was asked by the media about all of the issues, whether it was any of the policy issues, whether it was about the tactics around trying to have a Remain axis operating in this election. And what we heard on the doorsteps was people appreciated the honesty, people appreciated the way Colm equipped himself during that campaign in terms of all of the media performances. But people also were saying very clearly, as Colm has said, that they're not happy with the way things are in public services. They don't want to hear politicians again criticising civil servants for not taking decisions that the politicians should be taking themselves. So, like Colm, I hope that Sinn Féin and the DUP have taken that message and we get positive movement there. And I think people will be supporting Colm in the very difficult job that he's going to have in Westminster. But people need somebody in there, because there's going to be all sorts of arguments made and all sorts of ruses pulled, and it needs a competent legislator there to stand up for our interests.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there, gentlemen. There's another declaration coming up, but appreciate your time. There we have it, Mark Durkan and Colm Eastwood.
Okay, Enda, thank you very much indeed for that. We'll be back there, of course, as soon as there's any suggestion of a formal declaration for Colm Eastwood, and we're keeping an eye on all the other potential declarations. We have had quite a few at this point. Let's go upstairs. Mark Devonport and Nicholas have some serious numbers to take a look through. They must be very excited.
Yes, we're absolutely coming down with numbers at this stage. So let's just whip through a number of those constituencies. We saw West Tyrone. We actually informally talked about it a little time ago. Sinn Féin holding that. No real surprise, though, although there's a slightly depressed majority for all of Begley, yes? Moving on quickly then to East Londonderry again. No surprise that Gregory Campbell has held that, although...
Strong second, sorry, not strong second, but three parties very close together in second place.
Yeah, three parties close together, and this is not the only place where Alliance seems to have leapfrogged the Ulster Unionists. Now, if we also come on, we'll go to, I think, have we got Mid-Ulster to have a quick look at? Yeah, there we go. Again, very strong Sinn Féin territory there. Again, Alliance above the Ulster Unionists. And if we come on to some of these Belfast seats that have been so dramatic, let's just take a detailed look at North Belfast. Clearly, we've been seeing it already, hearing it already. John Finucane there in the lead. Let's look at the share and how things moved in terms of that knife edge battle. It was tipped as 47.1, 43.1%, actually slightly bigger majority maybe than Sinn Féin could have hoped for. And let's have a quick look at the change. Sorry, I'm just coming back to get the change here. We've lost something there, but we're coming back now. There we go. Here's the change.
The interesting point is that although the Alliance Party by right should have been squeezed between two very strong candidates from either side, in fact, the Alliance managed to retain and almost increase its vote.
Yeah, and that 5% increase was enough then for John Finucane to turn it, and actually a 3% share change there. And in East, a drop in the DUP, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, John Finucane's vote is pretty close to, but still a little bigger than the SDLP vote had been the previous time round.
And then in the neighbouring constituency of Belfast East, Naomi Long was not able to replicate the victory that Alliance had in North Down, but she did massively cut back on the majority. Gavin Robinson had an 8,000 majority previously. It's now less than 2,000.
Yeah. And Naomi ends up with more votes than Stephen Farry got in North Down, but slightly less vote share, 44.9% rather than 45.2%.
There you can see her quite close behind.
Those are two best vote shares for Alliance in any Westminster election that both happened this evening.
And there's the share, a 6 percentage point fall for the DUP and nearly a 9 percentage increase in the Alliance vote.
Yes, which is, again, not enough to actually win the seat, but to push the margin very much closer than it was last time around.
So some pretty dramatic numbers there, and some pretty human drama, I would say, behind the numbers that we've seen played out there in Belfast. Yeah. Back to you in the studio, Mark.
Okay, Mark, thanks very much indeed for that. Mark and Nicholas, with lots of numbers to look at. Just looking at those overall figures, it's very interesting, folks, isn't it, John? Obviously, not good for the DUP, down 5.4%, down 5.2% for Sinn Féin. Alliance up 10.9%, and that's with 9 seats of the 18 declared.
Yeah, Alliance's gains in terms of that vote share is obviously that's the story of the night. In terms of the headline, that's the overall story of the night. The headline is obviously Nigel Dodds' defeat in North Belfast. Beyond that, and obviously Sinn Féin will be utterly delighted to oust Nigel Dodds and get John Finucane in. But beyond that, actually, Sinn Féin's vote share is down quite significantly, 5%, which would be a concern because their council election results weren't great recently. And we are hearing that the South Down is not a great, potentially not a great result. Chris Hazard could still be elected, but we hear it's tight. Fermanagh and South Tyrone could be tight for Sinn Féin, and they seem certain to lose Foyle. So to the SDLP, to Colm Eastwood. So pretty mixed, really, for Sinn Féin. Obviously, the DUP down 5.5% as well. As I say, I think 2017 were high watermarks for those parties. They did so well in 2017. It's very difficult to defend. In the same way the DUP had the problem in 2017 at the Assembly election. The Assembly was coming down in size to 90 seats, and it was difficult for the DUP to defend third seats there. There can be a problem when you pile on votes at one election. Everyone assumes you can, it's easy to do and you can keep going. Yeah. You can't at some point. Alliance will eventually hit that point the way they're going, but a great night for them.
Yeah.
But it also impacts on the proposed talks and the mood music for those talks. So if the parties aren't buoyant, are they really going to go into talks wanting to have negotiation? I mean, I think this is unfolding into a nightmare scenario for the DUP. Yeah. They've lost North Belfast, South Belfast. Yep. They didn't pick up North Down, and you might say, well, they didn't have it. But there certainly was a suggestion in the media that it was theirs for the taking, that they were so close to it the last time. So all of those things put together, and then you look at what is happening in London, and they have no influence, no power. Boris doesn't need them. He can march ahead with his Brexit. And to listen to Sammy Wilson talking earlier to say, well, of course, he's going to change his deal before the end of January to suit the needs of unionists, the DUP, it's really not going to happen. And I was interested listening to Edwin talking earlier about what had happened, and he acknowledged that people are angry about having no assembly. They're angry that we have been sitting here in deadlock for 3 years, that our education system is in crisis, that our health service system is in crisis, and I totally agree with him. But the one thing that he is not acknowledging is this is also a reflection of people saying we don't want to leave the European Union and our interests are not being properly reflected. And I'm just wondering if now he may acknowledge that?
I think Nigel Dodds is all but irreplaceable. As Westminster leader, one assumes that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson will take over as Westminster leader.
But he was being tipped to replace Arlene Foster as well.
Well, this is it. So I think the DUP's got a real problem now in terms of personnel. On another, by the way, I'm hearing that Jeremy Corbyn is going to resign later today. So,
I've just also been told by a colleague that the suggestion that he just made is that he will not resign immediately. Whatever that means.
That would presumably allow for a succession, a leadership
contest.
Do you think he might
announce his intention to go?
Yes, I'll be fairly certain later today. And then I would assume, I would also assume that Labour has never had a woman leader in its history. I mean, surely this time the Labour Party has to have a woman leader. It appears that Emily Thornberry is already trying to get in pole position as the next leader of the Labour Party.
Well, there'll be quite a few people, you'd imagine, whose name might be in the hat. It's whether or not it will be somebody in the mould of Jeremy Corbyn, who's got the backing of Momentum, or whether they go for something completely different. And again, a name that's tossed about as somebody who might be in the mould of the Labour Party, in a previous guise, somebody like Keir Starmer. I don't know if you think that's credible.
Keir Starmer on the right, Rebecca Long-Bailey of the left would be their favoured candidate. But Emily Thornberry would be certainly of the the centre left.
But it's also
So-
interesting that Labour weren't predicting a landslide. Now, given the opposition, given the 10 years of austerity, given the disarray in the Tory party, they were never saying it was going to be a landslide. The best that they were hoping for was a hung parliament. Really, that tells you a lot about the state of the Labour Party as well.
If Keir Starmer had been leading the Labour Party, this would have been a very close election.
But he's
Agreed.
disappeared. Where has he been in the campaign as well?
Well, I suppose he's so
Perhaps
far
Corbyn didn't want
removed
him.
from Jeremy Corbyn's
Yeah.
view of the world that maybe he deliberately put himself out of harm's way.
But maybe that was increasingly obvious to people as well.
I mean, this is the result that really ought to have happened logically in 2017, but Theresa May ran such an appalling campaign that it didn't come to pass. But this was waiting to happen. The fact is the Labour Party, when it's of the left, doesn't do well. Michael Foot, I don't know, he got 209 seats. Corbyn is on course to get an even worse result at 191 seats.
OK, we'll come back and talk about the UK-wide picture in a bit more detail shortly. We've had a couple of declarations I just want to catch up with. Sammy Wilson, I should say, recently declared for East Antrim. Let's hear what he had to say when that was confirmed.
I declare that Sammy Wilson is returned to serve in Parliament for the East Antrim constituency. Thank you.
In the forthcoming session of Parliament, that first of all, during that time as a party, we will do our best to restore the Assembly so that decisions can be made. And if Sinn Féin's intransigence in locking the doors of Stormont to stop good things happening to Northern Ireland continues, then we say to the British government, either bring in direct rule or change the rules to keep the shirkers out and the workers in. The other big issue, of course, is the restoration of certainty to our own economy and to the economy of the United Kingdom as a whole. And we will work to see that the voice of the people of the United Kingdom to leave the EU and to reap the benefits of being outside the EU are delivered for the whole of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland. And ironically, although people say with a big majority we have lost our leverage in Parliament, with a big majority the government is no longer tied by those who want us to remain, and we will be saying to the government, get a deal which gets us out and gets the whole of the United Kingdom out, including Northern Ireland.
That's Chris Hazard, Sinn Féin's recently declared MP in South Down. Let's hear what he had to say.
In South Down, the people, obviously in the light of the Brexit catastrophe, have stood up and put the interests of the people of South Down and in Ireland to our fore. So again, I want to thank all of the people in South Down who voted for me. I want to congratulate all those candidates who also stood in the race. It's difficult, especially in the winter time. Fair play to everybody who put their name forward. And most especially everybody in the Sinn Féin team who come out. It's a difficult slog in a winter election to come out and work so hard. This victory is for all of you. Gora Míle Maíogaibh.
So we heard things might be tight in South Down. Former safe seat, of course, for the SDLP. I'll just give you those figures. Chris Hazard, 16,137. Michael Savage of the SDLP, 14,517. That's a majority of 1,620 for Chris Hazard. He was on 32.4% of the vote share, and Michael Savage, the SDLP candidate, on 29.2%. So that's an interesting one. Mike, I just want to ask you, Fermanagh, South Tyrone, we spoke to your candidate and your friend Tom Elliott 10 minutes ago, was it? And he said it was too tight to call. Nobody's prepared to call it at this stage. Is that a life belt, a welcome life belt, potentially at this stage for the Ulster Unionist Party?
Absolutely. As I say, the ultimate success and failure is getting back into the House of Commons. So if it's Tom, that's fantastic. It looks like it's not, unfortunately, going to be Danny Kinahan in South Antrim.
No, it doesn't look like he's going to do it. We don't have the figures for that at this stage, do we, South Antrim? I actually do have the figures for South Antrim.
Is it about 3,000 for?
Yeah, it is. It's a majority of 2,689. That's just popped up there as I was looking for it. Paul Girvan from the DUP, 15,149. He's on 35.3%. Danny Kinahan of the Ulster Unionist Party, 12,460. The Alliance candidate there, John Blair, and the party was talking him up beforehand, 8,190. That's up 11.6% for the Alliance party. Danny Kinahan was down 1.8% and Paul Girvan down 3%. So Paul Girvan, pretty comfortably home there, John, it has to be said, and no huge surprise.
Not a surprise at all. I mean, Paul Girvan, a very hard-working constituency MP, but Danny Kinahan had put a lot of effort into the constituency. Massively disappointed in 2017 when he lost what he gained in 2015, and it does put all the UUP eggs into that Fermanagh and South Tyrone basket. But Tom Elliott was far from despondent when we heard him earlier, so it's possible.
Well, he's pretty coy on these occasions. In 2015, I had been up with Danny, who had won the seat up at the Valley count, and was making my way down to Omagh when Tom phoned me. I was hands-free. Tom said, this is like 2:30, 3 in the morning. He said, "Are you thinking of coming down to the count?" I said, "I'm on my way, Tom. How's it going?" And he said, "Well, I don't really know, but I'm ahead." And I said, "That's great, Tom." And remember, previously it was 4 votes. I said, "Have you any idea how far you're ahead?" He said, "Yeah, about 500 votes." I said, "My God, how many more boxes to open?" "Oh," he says, "they're all open." I says, "Tom, is that your way of telling me you're the new Member of Parliament for Fermanagh South Tyrone?" I suppose so.
Yeah, well, that's very good. We're just being told by my producer that there's talk of a recount in Fermanagh South Tyrone. Whispers, I'm being told, of a recount in Fermanagh South Tyrone. We'll come.
Just find out.
Yeah.
What Mike has been saying all night is actually the opposite of what is actually beneficial for the Ulster Unionist Party, because the seat that they are in with a chance of winning is a seat that they're doing with the cooperation of the DUP. Throughout the evening, Mike has constantly been having a pop at the DUP and about the need to have all of this progressiveness and all of this here. And in all of the areas that they've been doing that and presenting themselves as that, they have been failing and failing miserably. The one area where they're actually doing well is an area where they're cooperating with the DUP.
Saying Tom Elliott's not a progressive?
I'm saying that they're cooperating with the DUP. Mike uses the term progressive. I would say that we are progressive.
OK, let's hear from the newly returned DUP MP for South Antrim. We mentioned his figures there. Let's have Paul Girvan's acceptance speech.
The work that we have been doing in South Antrim, we will continue and we will move on for the future. And I believe that we have exciting days ahead. We're not in for an easy run, but let's be honest, we will deliver for all of the people of South Antrim. And I want to thank Almighty God for the favour that He has shown to the people, to our party, so as they return me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
OK, Paul Girvan, the newly returned MP for South Antrim. Upper ban is on its way, and we're hearing that it could be down to 20 votes in Fermanagh South Tyrone. So there is a bit of talk of, not surprisingly, of a recount. Remember, it was 4 votes not too many elections ago. 875 votes separated the two candidates from Sinn Féin and the Ulster Unionist Party last time round. So we'll have lots more on that in just a moment or two. Don't dare turn the television off or turn your light out. But we're going to go for a moment or two over to Tara, who is at the Belfast count in Titanic, Belfast. And what's happening there? Tell us something interesting.
Yes, well, we've had a very interesting hour, so of just result after result. We're expecting the South Belfast Declaration very soon. But just in the meantime, I'm going to talk to the newly elected South Down MP, Chris Hazzard, and of course the Sinn Féin President, Mary Lou McDonald. Chris, congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Are you happy with the result? I mean, the SDLP came pretty close.
Well, I'm delighted. You know, in 2017, we won this seat for the first time ever in South Down. We didn't think we'd be back again here 2 years later with a snap winter election. Difficult conditions as always. But, you know, in 2017, we made a commitment to the people to stand up for them when it came to Brexit, to really give them a voice. And that message resonated big time in South Down the last number of weeks. They realised that in Sinn Féin and myself that they had the strongest voice possible, and I'm delighted that they've come out and endorsed me.
And Mary Lou McDonald, let's look at the overall picture then for Sinn Féin tonight. Obviously that victory in North Belfast, but defeat in Foyle. What's your sense of the overall picture?
Well, I think the overall picture for us is very, very positive. Obviously, I think the victory in North Belfast is the headline news, if you like, from our performance. But I'm happy that across all of the constituencies, we fought a very positive campaign. We fought a campaign that was very much about the future. We asked people, including our own voters in some instances, to stretch themselves in the common good and to come out of our party political furrows. So I think the result overall sends a really, really strong message again that the North hasn't consented to Brexit, that people want their place, their homes, their communities, their livelihoods protected. And I'm very proud of the team of MPs that we are returning to again advance those interests. Of course, I'm disappointed with Foyle. We won it last time for the first time. We didn't manage to hold on to it on this outing. But as they say in Irish Big Law, Ella Own, we'll come back for that another day. We were just outpaced, it just was not our day in Foyle.
But do you think the Foyle result was about abstentionism, though, and people in Foyle want their voice in Westminster?
Well, undoubtedly. I mean, Colin based his campaign on that promise. But I would say to you that given the exit poll and what we're seeing, the results that we're seeing coming from across the water, as it turns out, nobody's going to stop Boris. And as we had said, unfortunately, no Irish MPs can stop Brexit. Our consistent position has been that it's our duty to protect Ireland, to protect this island and everybody who calls this island home. I believe our analysis is correct. I believe our analysis has been borne out and will be borne out again.
What about Stormont, though? What does this mean now for the talks on Monday?
Listen, we're in on Monday and we need to get cracking. I mean, we need pace, we need purpose, we need urgency in getting the Assembly and the Executive up and running. And I think I certainly don't welcome the fact that there is a Tory majority at Westminster. Obviously, Tory politics is bad for Ireland. But I do think that the fact that the DUP now are no longer kingmakers, that they have an opportunity to extricate themselves from the melodrama at Westminster and turn their attention back here, back home, because if there is a democratic gap, it's not in London or at Westminster, it's here in Belfast. So we want this to work, we want an accommodation, we want all of the issues resolved. We don't have to make a choice between rights and public services, we can accommodate all of that. But we need the DUP now to come and step into power sharing with the rest of us. So I hope that will be one of the consequences of the election results here this evening.
OK, thanks to both of you very much indeed. Hopefully South Belfast declaration coming up very soon. Mark.
OK, well, we look forward to that. Tara, thanks very much indeed for that. Lots happening still down at the Titanic Count Centre. Let's cross over to Enda McLafferty, who is in Magherafelt, sticking the pace very well, I see. What's the latest you're hearing there? What can you tell us?
Well, the count's coming thick and fast now in Magherafelt. We've waited all evening and we seem to be getting them all in the space of half an hour, 40 minutes. Mark, one interesting figure to throw at you. We are hearing that the Foyle count, of course, we're waiting for the final declaration and the election of Colm Eastwood, but there's some suggestion that he may have won that by 10,000 votes plus, Mark, which would be quite a turnaround when you consider only 169 votes separated Sinn Féin and the SDLP last time round. Of course, the focus is falling now on Fermanagh South Tyrone, because there's that close call and the talk of a recount. Steve Aiken, the Ulster Unionist leader, is with me. Are you going to be hightailing it off to Omagh pretty soon?
As soon as I do, if I don't freeze here, as the way it's going at the moment. I don't think I've ever been in a place that's been as this cold without Arctic warfare clothing on it. But Fermanagh South Tyrone is very close. So obviously, as we
just hold on, Steve. We're going to go across to the South Belfast declaration. So stay with us a moment or two, and we'll hear what the outcome is there.
Hereby declare that the election, the number of votes for each candidate was as follows. Bradshaw Paula Jane, Alliance Party, 6,786. 6786. Hannah Clare, SDLP, Social Democratic and Labour Party, 27,079. 27079. Henderson Michael, Ulster Unionist Party, 1259. 1259. Little Pengelly Emma, Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, 11,678. 11678. McHugh Chris, into 550. 550. I declare that Claire Hanna is returned to serve in Parliament for the Belfast South constituency. Thank you.
So that's a huge victory for Claire Hanna of the SDLP in South Belfast. A lot of people have been saying for quite some time that she was very likely to take that seat. 27,079 votes. Emma Little-Pengelly, the former DUP MP for South Belfast, 11,678. And if my quickly scribbled maths are correct, I make that a majority of 15,401. The professors are nodding. Is that right? Yes, I got that right. Okay, so 15,500 of a majority for Claire Hanna. Quick response to that, John Tong.
Staggering margin. I think everyone thought that Claire Hanna was going to win, but they thought it would be about 2,000 or 3,000, perhaps 4,000 votes at most. That's an extraordinary result.
Well, I think it is extraordinary, but it's also testament to her personal tenacity. She was written off a short period of time ago because of an internal strife within the SDLP. She has fought tooth and nail around the Remain campaign, and in many ways is Mrs. Remain. I mean, she was the person who was invariably on giving the positives for the Remain campaign. She will be absolutely delighted and exhausted, I would think.
I would have thought so. Let me just tell you those figures again. The majority last time for Emma Little-Pengelly was 1,996. The majority now for Claire Hanna in South Belfast, 15,401. Claire Hanna's vote of 27,079 is a share of 57.2 and a change of plus 31.3%.
It shows how the electorate's voting tactically as well, because obviously the Alliance have been doing very well in other constituencies, but their vote, Paula Bradshaw's vote there is fairly low, and the electorate simply
down
made
3.9%.
But the Remain candidate we want here is Claire Hanna, and they've gone for her on that basis.
And Joe Swinson's out, by the way. Joe Swinson's lost her seat. That's just flashed up. Yeah.
Claire's vote's also good for the House of Commons because there hasn't been that nationalist voice from Northern Ireland, and you've got her, you've probably got Colin Eastwood as well, and I think that makes a real difference to the debates that we've had and that voice from Northern Ireland in the House of Commons. Really important results they are.
Yeah, although some people might say, who would share your view on that and who would be pro-Remain rather than pro-Brexit, would say it's too little too late.
In some ways it is, but then you have to look to the DUP and ask the DUP about that, because they've not been the voice of Northern Ireland, because you've been a pro-Brexit party where Northern Ireland's been very Remain. So this is a chance, I think, for Northern Ireland to have its voice heard. But you're right, with the majority that Boris Johnson's going to get, it isn't as useful as it could have been had Northern Ireland had a loud voice over the last 5 years.
Northern Ireland's marginally Remain. It's 56 to...
But there's been no Remain voices
to 44.
Well,
100%.
Lady Herman, I suppose.
Yes,
Yeah, but there's still a long way to go, and I think these voices will be important, and at least the media will stop equating us with one party and understand that there are a multitude of opinions here.
I just want a quick response from David. When Claire Hanna gets up to the podium and speaks, we'll get it to you, if not live, certainly very, very quickly. And I want to go back to Enda as well, but we haven't heard from Sir David Liddington for quite some time. So welcome back. And just a quick response, just a quick catch-up of where you think we are.
I think it is unquestionably good news that there will be members of Parliament from the nationalist tradition in Northern Ireland who will take their seats at Westminster and speak for their communities and their strand of opinion here. I think that it's been a gap in the argument, because we've had unionist MPs who've taken their seats, but all the non-unionist MPs were Sinn Féin in the last Parliament, and they abstain, they don't come to Westminster, and that's a large chunk of the population unrepresented.
Let me ask you this question. David, will anybody in number 10 listen to what they have to say? Because DUP's not very happy not being listened to at the moment. I imagine that the SDLP and, let's not forget, Stephen Farry, the new Alliance MP for North Town, will not agree with very much of what Boris Johnson is about. Will they be listened to?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that the voice and the influence would have been greater in the last hung parliament than they will in this parliament, which will have a significant Conservative majority. But Boris Johnson wants to be the Prime Minister of the UK, not remembered in history as the Prime Minister who lost the UK. And it looks probable we're going to get a Northern Ireland 18 MPs, where for the first time since 21, there is not a majority of Unionist MPs.
OK, let's. I want to just interrupt very quickly, if you don't mind, because I want to go to my colleague Stephen Walker, who is at the Titanic Count Centre, and he's talking to Claire Hanna. Let's hear what Claire has to say about her thumping majority in South Belfast.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm delighted. I'm really grateful to 27,000 people who put their trust in me in this election, and to our huge, relentless, dedicated and energetic team who've just, all that positive energy has carried us through the last couple of months, and I'm just feeling very, very thankful, a little bit daunted about the task that's ahead of us in terms of the shape of the next Parliament, but determined to get stuck in and to represent everybody in South Belfast.
Are you conscious that a lot of people have lent you their votes?
Absolutely. Any vote is always only lent. You have to earn it each time. I believe that we've done that. We wanted people to vote for something and not against something, and we listened to what people in South Belfast were concerned about, and that's what we spent the last several months, indeed several years, talking about. And I know that people don't entrust you with their vote forever, and we're very, very conscious of that.
How difficult is it going to be when you go to Westminster when there's a large Conservative majority?
Oh look, there's no easy rides in politics, and yes, I think that's very concerning as somebody who is very concerned about Brexit, who's determined to protect public services. We have an uphill challenge, but we will do the best that we can do. We will make alliances where we can. We will get stuck in, and we will always try and get maximum benefit and to deliver on the promise that we should have had through devolution and through the Good Friday Agreement. That will be a lot of work, but we can't walk off the job. It's important to do it.
But will your votes really count, bearing in mind the Conservative majority looks as if it's going to be huge?
I'm not one of these people who think that votes only matter if you're the casting vote, that, you know, unless I get to be the one that comes in and topples it one way or the other. That's not what democracy is about. Democracy is about representing people. It's about the quality of an argument. It's about improving people's awareness of the issue. Again, I compare it to 1998 after the Good Friday Agreement. There was a lot of pretty boring, detailed work to do in committees and on legislation to make the institutions fit for purpose, and that's something I think we'll have to do on Brexit.
You've had your internal arguments with the party over Fianna Fáil. Are they over now, or are they still ongoing?
There's no issue bigger than Brexit. My views are very clear. I believe in pluralism. This was a campaign that was fought with many SDLP activists, activists from the Green Party, activists from the Labour Party in Britain and Ireland, activists from Fine Gael, activists from Fianna Fáil, and many, many people who were brand new to political campaigns. That's what I want to see in politics. It's pluralism, and it's the widest possible relationships, and clearly it's paid off.
And what do all the local results mean now in terms of the talks which are due to begin next Monday?
Well, what I've heard very, very clearly, and I know that every other candidate will have heard, and hopefully those parties that have a mandate to form an executive, is that people just want this over. They know we need devolution to protect us, and I hope that's a message that will be heard loudly and clearly in the talks. There's no perfect time, but the protection is required right now. So I know I'm delighted. Colm and I have got a strong result, and we'll probably be in Westminster next week, but we will certainly be turning up for duty at the talks as well and doing whatever we can to restore the institutions that we so desperately need.
Claire Hanna, many congratulations, and back to Mark in the studio.
Stephen, thanks very much indeed. Stephen Walker with Claire Hanna at the Belfast Count. Let's go back to Enda McLafferty, who we so rudely interrupted talking to Steve Aiken in the perishingly cold Count Centre in Magherafelt. Apologies about that, but obviously everybody wanted to hear what was happening in South Belfast. Anyway, you were talking to Steve Aiken about how close things are in Fermanagh South Tyrone.
Yes, I'm delighted to say that Steve Aiken is still with me, because he threatened to walk off, get into his car and drive to Omagh for that recount we're told about. So we're delighted you stayed on with us, Steve. Do you think you're going to pull this off in Fermanagh South Tyrone?
Look, Fermanagh South Tyrone is always very close. and Tom is an excellent candidate, and I hope we will pull it through.
If you do, Edwin Poots says that you will owe a great debt of gratitude to the DUP because they will have essentially handed you this seat.
Well, let's be the only candidate who could have won for Manor South Tyrone is Tom Elliott, and Tom has stood before and has won before, and Tom is the best candidate. And hopefully we're going to see Tom pull through. And I don't know how close it's going to be, and I'm going to find out in a couple of minutes when I drive over there. But I think Tom will be an excellent MP for Fermanagh South Tyrone, because we need to have somebody who's representing the people of Fermanagh South Tyrone on the green benches.
That result aside, of course, it won't gloss over the fact that it has been a bitterly disappointing election for your party. You've been relegated to third or fourth in many constituencies, and Alliance seems to have replaced you.
It's not been a very good night for unionism, full stop. Starting off with Boris Johnson's majority, which means now that the withdrawal deal is going to go through and we are going to become a place apart. What's going on in Scotland with the SNP decimating all the other political parties?
But what's going on in the Ulster Unionist Party? Forget about Scotland and Brexit for now. What's going on in your party?
But for the whole of unionism, this has not been a good election. And look, let's not take it away from Alliance. Alliance have done well. Alliance picking up in North Down, Alliance vote coming up in the east and even areas in the west. Alliance have done well. I'm not going to disguise that fact. It's something that unionism, and particularly the Ulster Unionist Party, needs to take into account.
And how are you going to pick up the pieces after this? Because not for the first time there's going to have to be a lot of soul searching in the Ulster Unionist Party.
Listen, this was a Brexit election. This election was primarily about Brexit and where it was going to and what the implications were. We need to be in a situation starting early next week where we're trying to get the Assembly back up and running and trying to restore some form of government to Northern Ireland. That needs to be the first priority, because later on today, once the nature of Boris Johnson's victory becomes clear, we're in a situation where, you know, by the end of January, the United Kingdom will no longer be within the European Union. And we're then into a very short timeline before we get to the point where the implications of all the withdrawal agreement come through.
But the difficulty is that the electorate are not listening to your message. Liberal unionism, for instance, now is more at home in Alliance than it is in the Ulster Unionist Party.
Well, it's my job as the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party to convince them to come back again. Look, I'm not going to disguise the fact the Alliance Party had a good election. You know, we have...
At your expense?
We'll need to look at the detail, we'll need to analyse the facts, and we'll need to see what's out there. But for us, for the Ulster Unionist Party, we need to look very closely at what we've done. But what is very clear is that we need a broad spectrum of unionism. And the Ulster Unionist Party's position, we need to have a strong Ulster Unionist Party out there. And we do need to listen to what the people are saying, and we do need to be able to do that.
We've heard this before from your predecessors. They've come along with the same message after a disappointing election, and nothing seems to have changed. Except the man at the top.
Well, we are going to keep on pushing on, because our message was getting a lot of resonance on the doors. We're not breaking through, we accept that, but we need to keep on pushing on, because let's be clear, Northern Ireland is going to become a place apart. Our politics and everything is going to have to change when Boris Johnson's withdrawal deal becomes de facto the future for Northern Ireland.
I can't help but notice on your tie you have a whole series of anchors. Is it that because you have a sinking feeling tonight?
Not at all. Anybody who's been in the Navy knows that something about an anchor, it's what you hold fast to. We hold fast to the Union, we hold fast to the people of Northern Ireland, and we hold fast to what we want to see as the future.
OK, Steve Aiken, we'll leave it there and we'll see what happens in Fermanagh South Tyrone. And with that, Mark, it's back to you in Belfast.
Enda, thanks very much indeed. I wonder, will Steve Aiken's anchor hold in the months ahead? We'll find out. Much to discuss in terms of the Ulster Unionist Party's performance, and depending on whether or not they win Fermanagh South Tyrone, I suppose people will have a very different interpretation of quite how well or how badly the party has done. Anyway, let's go to our virtual Westminster studio. Mark Simpson is there, and things are, I suppose, Mark, starting to take shape.
Yeah, you would hope so. It is, nearly 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's look at the big picture. It's all about the numbers, and of course, the magic number is there. 326 seats to win. As you can see, that number guarantees Boris Johnson an overall majority. The party got 318 last time. As you can see tonight, they have more than 200 seats already. And as we know, the exit poll predicts that they will smash that. They will win 368, that is the forecast, and that would be a very, very comfortable majority indeed for Boris Johnson. And if you look at the end of that line there, No need for the Tories to rely on their old friends, and I repeat, old friends, the DUP. They're not going to get the 10 seats they got last time. Yes, they've got 5 already. But what is the shape of the current Northern Ireland political map as we speak at 3 minutes to 4 in the morning? Well, more than half of the seats have now been counted, and it is a broadly similar pattern to what happened last time, with lots of Sinn Féin green on the map and plenty of DUP red. But some seats have changed colour, including North Belfast, including South Belfast. Those changes maybe aren't making a big, obvious difference on the map that we're looking at, but they will have a big impact politically, particularly with the likes of Nigel Dodds no longer at Westminster. It has been a dramatic night already, Mark. There could be more drama to come as the rest of this map is coloured in.
Certainly could be. Mark, thanks very much indeed. I want to just look at the UK-wide picture and hear some more, particularly from Sir David Lidington, former Deputy Prime Minister, and Baroness Smith, Labour leader in the Lords, and welcome to you both. Just to look at those figures, Conservatives at the moment sitting on 214 seats, Labour on 143. That's with 414 seats declared, 236 still to go. In terms of share, Conservatives, David Lidington, up 1.4%, Labour down 8.2%. In terms of seats, Conservatives up 32 seats, Labour down 43 seats. And a swing from Labour to the Conservatives of just under 5%. I mean, it's good for the Tory party, but it's not really your kind of conservatism, is it?
Oh, I think we'll see a mix of people from all strands of the Conservative tradition there. But what is certainly true is this is a personal victory for Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. I was certainly 6 weeks ago, I would not have believed that we would see some of these Labour heartland seats in the Conservative column tonight. Now, he judged
Just
that
looking
right.
at pictures of him going back
right.
to Tory party headquarters, I assume from his constituency, from his count, I'm assuming at this stage. Yeah. But anyway, there are the cars making their way through London.
Yeah, I think, but I think if you listen to what he says, he wants to get the UK out of the European Union legally at the end of January, and clearly that is going to happen now with this majority at his disposal. But he's then made it very clear that he wants to be Prime Minister who makes significant advances in terms of the UK's environmental leadership and standards in the world, that he wants to see investment in infrastructure. He's committed himself to very significant increases in public services. Now, those have got to be paid for, and that means that he's going to have to take some difficult decisions about taxation and borrowing, but also, I think, grip the fundamental problems the UK economy has had for many years of failing to meet the best in the world in terms of our industrial competitiveness. And if you're going to get the tax revenue, you've got to create the wealth, and that means you've got to be a more competitive economy in a fierce global market. I think that's what he's determined to do.
What about the Labour Party, and what about the future leadership of the party? I see Jeremy Corbyn has said he will not resign immediately, which does suggest he's going to resign, if not immediately, pretty soon.
Yes, and
there's no way of avoiding that now, is there?
I don't think there is, and I think his comments were quite clear there. John McDonnell did an interview some weeks ago.
Will he go too?
But as to Campbell. Well, what John said at the time was, if we don't do well, then Jeremy and I will have to go. I think it was paraphrasing. So I think that's likely. I think you're going to see sort of quite a lot of examination from the Labour Party. I do take issue with what David has just said, because what Boris Johnson has said is that he wants to have a very short transition period for Brexit. So we would technically, legally leave on the 31st of January, but the transition would end at the end of the year. Now, it seems to me to be very difficult to get everything done in that year. So there is still the possibility, which wasn't ruled out during the election campaign, that there could be no deal and we could crash out with the economic consequences of that. So I don't quite share David's sort of rosy picture of this. But I think, from Northern Ireland interest, two big casualties for the Labour Party tonight are Vernon Coker, who was our Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and David Hanson, who was a minister when I was here in Northern Ireland. So we have lost some
both pretty popular, actually, in Northern Ireland.
Very popular, and very popular in their constituencies as well. So I think they're a big loss to the House of Commons.
Edwin, you were nodding there. You had a lot of time for both men.
Yeah, I worked quite closely with David Hanson, and he was always a gentleman. Vernon Coker I thought he played a very fair hand as the shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland.
So that's a bit of a blow to those two individuals, but to that corporate Labour Party as well. That's a blow when you're losing individuals like that who've been around for such a long time.
It is, and I think we're going to have to look very carefully at who's left, how we manage the process of opposition. Because I think one thing you have to do, if you've got a government with a big majority, you need to have a strong opposition. So we need to put our brightest and our best that are there and push them forward. And it will be difficult for us. Politics isn't like a football match. If you lose, you don't go home and shrug and say, that was terrible, we'll do better next week. Yeah. There's some time we have to wait before we can put our policies that we believe into action.
After Tony Blair won his landslide in 1997, I can remember how difficult it was for us in the Conservative Party to pick ourselves up and do the rethinking that was needed, as well as have the new leadership developed.
All right, listen, I want to give you an update on the situation in Fermanagh South Tyrone. There is going to be a recount. So that's not great news for the people down there who've got to do the recount, or I suppose the candidates. We understand that at this stage it looks like Michelle Gildernew is 62 votes ahead and a recount has been granted. So we'll hear from Gillian Fowler, who's our reporter on the ground, very shortly. But first, let's just cross over to Stephen Walker, who is our correspondent, of course, at the Titanic Centre in Belfast. Stephen.
Hi, Mark. I'm now with Emma Little-Pengelly, defeated candidate in South Belfast. Firstly, commiserations.
Thank you.
Did you think at the beginning of this campaign that this was going to happen?
Well, of course, South Belfast has always been a very difficult constituency. A number of parties are reasonably evenly balanced across the constituency and across various elections. So, of course, it was always going to be a challenge, even if everybody was in the field, even if it wasn't this type of Brexit-orientated election where Brexit has not yet been resolved. So, of course, we always knew it was going to be a challenge. Then when Sinn Féin and the Green Party pulled out of the race, we knew we were really up against it in terms of a phenomenal challenge. But we took that to the people. We fought a very, very strong, positive campaign. And of course, I'm disappointed that that didn't come through.
You said it was a phenomenal result, and it is a phenomenal result by Claire Hann. What do you put that down to? Is it just simply Brexit and Remain argument?
Well, like South Belfast voted Remain, 33,000 people, I think it's estimated, voted Remain in South Belfast. So, of course, in the context where, as we've said before, Brexit has been messed up by the government over 3 years, it still hasn't been delivered. I think in that context, people were willing to come out. There, as I said, 33,000 people voted Remain, 27,000 of those have come out to support Claire Hanna. But, of course, as I said throughout the campaign, people are trying to fight this on a Brexit election, but the reality is Boris Johnson, it appears, I've been down here, I haven't seen the
Brexit,
but Boris Johnson has a clear majority. Brexit will proceed as he has declared by the 31st of January.
But Brexit has cost you your job, hasn't it?
Well, of course it is, but these things are much bigger than what my job is. This is much more about what the issues are. And as I've said...
was it a mistake for the party to back Brexit? Because Nigel Dodds has lost his seat, you've lost your seat, and Alex Easton didn't take a seat in Northdown. So it's a really bad night for the DUP.
Regardless of whether you think it was right or wrong to back Brexit, the people of the United Kingdom voted to leave. We believe in the principle of democracy, and therefore it was right. It was the right and honourable thing to do to try to honour that. The Conservative Party manifesto, the Labour Party manifesto, many people decided that was the right approach. I still believe it was the right approach.
But on the issue of a bad night for the DUP, what's your response to that?
Because we've always said it had to be done in a sensible way. That is what we will be fighting for. That's what the DUP team that have been returned will be fighting for in the House of Commons. Of course, it hasn't been done in a sensible way, and that's why it hasn't been resolved, and that's why there is anger out there, and that's why we're getting some of these results, I suspect.
Okay. Emma Little-Pengelly, thank you very much. From the Titanic Centre, back to Mark in the studio.
Thanks very much indeed for that, Stephen. I've got my panel here. Just a quick word with them. I suppose no great surprise, Deirdre, that Emma Little-Pengelly would say she's disappointed. I'm not quite sure what she does next at this stage. But, that was as big a defeat as she might have expected.
Well, it was a thumping defeat. I suppose that there has been talk that she will have a seat as an MLA or be put into an MLA seat. I don't really know. I imagine she will have a future within the DUP because she has had such a high profile within the party. I can't imagine that she'd walk away from politics. But what happens next, I think they will really have to regroup as the party, because this has been a really bad day at the office for them. And yes, they can reflect on all sorts of things, and she talked there about Brexit, but the reality is they have taken a thumping over their position in terms of Brexit.
OK, we'll come back for more on that in a moment or two. Let's go to Fermanagh South Tyrone. We hear there's going to be a recount. We've said it's down to 62 votes. We understand Michelle Gildernew is ahead by that very small margin. Let's hear from Gillian Fowler precisely what the situation is and what happens next.
Well, Mark, the recount hasn't quite got underway yet. The count staff have taken a break. They're all back in position, waiting to go through the ballots once again. We're told that both Michelle Gildernew and Tom Elliott have polled in the region of 21,900 votes, but both the Sinn Féin and Ulster Unionists are saying there are 62 votes in it, Michelle Gildernew being slightly ahead at this stage. So the full recount will be getting underway shortly. I'm not sure how long that's going to take. Could be another hour or so, I suppose. But obviously, Michelle Gildernew will be disappointed, even though she may well come out ahead, that she's seen her 875 majority from the last election cut back to this nail-biting finish once again.
If ever the old saying, every vote counts, was relevant, it's relevant in Fermanagh South Tyrone, that's for sure. 875 was the majority last time. 4 was the majority in 2010.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, 2010, that ended up going to a court case where they examined all the sort of doubtful votes and spoiled ballot papers as well. So that was a long, drawn-out, protracted process, which Michelle Gildernew eventually was declared the winner. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't get to that situation this time around. But we'll have to wait and see what the result of the recount will be once that gets underway here, hopefully in the next few minutes.
OK, I hope you packed an overnight bag. Julian, thanks very much indeed for that. You could be there for the long haul. I hope it's not as cold down there as it is in Magherafelt, that's for sure.
It is interesting how Fermanagh South Tyrone kind of went under the radar. It was the one that we were always talking about. The focus was on Fermanagh South Tyrone because there has been so much focus on North Belfast and South Belfast. I think we've taken our eye off that. And actually, both Michelle Gildernew and Tom Elliott had a very low-profile campaign. I mean, they were barely seen.
I agree. I mean, we sort of assumed somehow that Sinn Féin would hold on relatively comfortably, even though that the margin of victory last time was tiny, and the margin of victory is always tiny in that constituency. So yeah, it was one that was under the radar. One assumes that Sinn Féin will hold on. There's not going to be 62 votes that were wrongly counted, but
well, mind you, when it's 21,900 times 2, there's always a room for error or a little pile that disappears or whatever. Who knows how these things work out? But, in percentage terms, it's pretty small, isn't it? You can understand why the Ulster Unionists wanted a recount.
Of course.
Completely.
But spare a moment for candidates. If you're a candidate and going through a recount like this, it's nerve-wracking. For those of us who stood for election,
yes, it's not much fun.
Even if you think you're ahead, you're nervous when you go into your counts.
Yes.
And this will have to be a full recount. They can't just count the bundles of 50 and hundreds. They will have to count every single vote and check every single vote when it's as narrow a majority
and get out
as
the
that.
spoiled ballot papers again.
And go through them.
And check whether actually the voters' intention was clear.
Just looking at pictures from Foyle, where the Deputy Returning Officer is getting ready to make the declaration. You can see Colm Eastwood standing there on the platform. The other candidates coming up to stand beside him. That's Anne McCluskey, the N2 candidate, who said she expected Colm Eastwood to romp home. I think we're in absolutely no doubt. Gary Middleton there from the DUP. Deputy Returning Officer is about to make the announcement. Let's hear the figures. The formal figures as they are. Here we go.
The electorate was 74,346. The total votes polled, 47,370. The valid votes, 47,144. The invalid votes, 226. A percentage turnout of 63.72%. I, Wavell Moore, as the Deputy Returning Officer for the Foyle constituency, hereby declare that at the election the number of votes for each candidate was as follows. Eastwood Colm, SDLP, Social Democratic and Labour Party, 26,881. Ferguson Rachel, Alliance Party, 1,267. Guy Doran, Ulster Unionist Party, 1,088. Harkin Sean, People Before Profit Alliance, 1,332. McCallion Elisha, Sinn Féin, 9,771. McCloskey Anne, Entu, 2,032. Middleton Gary, Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, 4,773. I declare that Colm Eastwood is returned to serve in Parliament for the Foyle constituency. Thank you.
Comfortably returned. Let's just hear what he has to say. A majority of about 8,000, and Alicia McCallion's vote has halved in 2 years.
Thank you. Can I begin by thanking Virginia and all of the staff at the Electoral Office and all the staff that have been drafted in for the past couple of very cold and long days. We really do appreciate the effort that you've made. I also want to thank my campaign team, led by Ian Doherty and Brian Tierney. I want to thank Mark Durkan for his unstinting support during this campaign. I want to send a very big thank you to my election agent who's at home, John Tierney, somebody who all of the SDLP people in this room and all of the Derry people watching this all know is a great son of our city and somebody who we're all very proud to know. Can I also thank my wife Rachel and my two daughters Rosa and Maya for their love and their patience. I'm not sure we're going to get Daddy home too quickly, but for a day or two maybe. Anybody who's involved in public life knows how difficult it can be for a politician's family and knows the burden that they have to bear. And all of us who understand that are very appreciative of the effort and the support that they provide us. Can I also thank Alicia and all of the other candidates and congratulate them on the campaign. And look, I've been on both sides of election counts. I've won elections, I've lost elections. The best advice I ever got was not to take winning or losing too seriously, and there's always another day. I want to especially thank the people of Derry. I think they have sent a very clear message. In fact, I think they've roared that message to all of us in politics today. This is a story about the revival of the SDLP, but it's more. This is more about the message and the desires of the people of our city and the people of the North generally. We heard you loud and clear. We know you want someone to go to Westminster to fight your case, to stand up to Boris Johnson, to protect us from Brexit. But you also want us to get back to work in Stormont. No more excuses will be accepted by the people of our city or the people of Northern Ireland. Let's get back to work. We all heard about the health service. We all heard about the cuts in education. We all heard about the generations that we have lost from our city who have had to leave to find work. Let's get back to work and do something about it. Monday is an opportunity. We don't need any more time. All of the discussions have been had. all of the negotiations have taken place. Let's get on with it. Let's get back to work.
Colm Eastwood, the SDLP leader, and now MP for Foyle, a majority of 17,110. Alicia McCallion from Sinn Féin lost the seat. Let's hear what she has to say.
What is a Baltic cold arena on a cold December night. But I want to take the opportunity to congratulate Colm Eastwood on what has to be said is a mighty impressive victory. So well done, Colm, and your team. It's clear throughout the results that we have coming through tonight that the people in the north have sent a clear message to the Tories and the DUP. They've once again very, very clearly rejected Brexit, and we're seeing that across all of the constituencies so far that have come out. I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone in the Foyle constituency who did come out today and vote for myself. It's been an absolute honour and privilege to have served the people of Foyle for the past 2.5 years as your MP, and prior to that as a public representative. But just to make a pledge to those people that I will continue to work on their behalf day in and daily. And I look forward to working with Colm and with everyone else next week as we do go into talks and we do try to find a resolution which will bring about a credible and sustainable government. So I look forward to the opportunity for the SDLP and the other parties to come into those conversations, and hopefully, as I say, we can find a resolution to see the executive brought back. I want to take the opportunity to thank my family, and Colm's right, and I mean I see Rachel here today, and it's very difficult for anyone with a young family to put themselves forward for elected representatives, and I'm sure Rachel and the girls will be glad to have you back, albeit only for a few days. But it's very difficult, and I want to thank my own family, my husband Declan and my own children and the entire team at Sinn Féin, because no matter what the result has shown tonight, the campaign in which I fought, I believe, was a very positive campaign, and the team of activists that we had, and indeed the entire party, from the party leadership right down, was incredible. So thank you very, very much on behalf of myself for all of the work that you have done over the past number of weeks. But the challenge for us all collectively from Monday onwards is to do what we can to continue to protect the Good Friday Agreement and to continue to protect the interests of Ireland, because it's very evident from the results that we're seeing from across the water that the indications are we're going to have a very hard right-wing British government who will not look to serve the interests of the people of Ireland. So again, I look forward to working with all of the political parties here who are on the same agenda to try and protect the interests of the people, all of the people here across the island, and I look forward to working with all of the parties in the days and weeks ahead. But a wise man once said, a man who's very, very close to my own heart, that Republicans never retire. So again, my pledge to the people of Derry is that this isn't the last of Alicia McCallion, and me and Team Sinn Féin will do everything that we can in the days, weeks, months and years ahead to build a better Derry for you and for everyone. Gura míle maith.
So Alicia McCallion there making her concession speech, I suppose. She's lost that in no uncertain terms. She had a drop in her vote, just looking at the numbers there, of 8,485 since 2 years ago, and a majority for Colm Eastwood of 17,110. Anyway, enough of number crunching from me, because I'm going to hand over to the experts, Mark and Nicholas, who have all the equipment up there in the newsroom to talk us through whatever it is we need to know. But that's quite some result for the SDLP in Foyle, Mark.
It is quite some result. I was going to say, Mark, no more excuses. Let us get back to work and start looking at these numbers now, because they really are quite incredible, some of these swings. So we're going to look now at Foyle and the result there, which you should be seeing shortly. a really crushing victory, Nicholas, there for Colin Eastwood, given that the SDLP were trailing Sinn Féin just 2 years ago.
Yes, and I mean that 57%, it's more than the SDLP had got in Foyle any time recently. I'm going to check back and see whether John Hume ever managed to do better now.
I think it's maybe bettered on John Hume's result.
Yeah.
And if there is a message, we've certainly seen some great decreases in both Sinn Féin and the DUP's vote, which seems to be linked probably to reactions to the Stormont standoff. We see there a 19 percentage point decrease in Sinn Féin's vote, a 6 percentage point decrease in the DUP vote.
Sinn Féin's vote share pretty much halved. Sinn Féin's number of votes pretty much halved. I wonder to what extent it's the Stormont standoff. I wonder to what extent it's appearance of being effective about Brexit. But in any case, it's pretty remarkable.
And let's look at Belfast South, which is obviously the other big success story for the SDLP. And once again, they haven't just taken the seat, they've had a crushing victory, which is astonishing. 2 years ago, the SDLP lost all their 3 MPs. It looked like they were consigned to the dustbin of parliamentary history.
Yeah, and here again, Claire Hanna also getting 57%, the same vote share.
There we go, we can just see that there. Something magic about the 57% for the SDLP that they're all coming out there.
Yeah.
And let's have a look at the change, because obviously, we've seen here, actually, unusually, because elsewhere Alliance has been up very significantly, but of course they took a bit of a hit in South Belfast, and there's a coalition of forces coming in there. Greens, Alliance voters, SDLP voters, and Sinn Féin voters, all behind the SDLP.
Clearly from numbers, people who voted for unionist parties in the past, but who backed Claire Hanna as the most convincing anti-Brexit candidate.
Let's look at the position overall in Northern Ireland, can we? We bring that up now. 13 seats out of 18 declared. We've got 5 DUP, 5 Sinn Féin, 2 SDLP MPs, 1 Alliance MP. But this is interesting. This is the share of votes across Northern Ireland, and there's Alliance in 3rd position. So it used to be the 5th party, but at the moment, even with those 2 big significant SDLP victories, it's still holding on to 3rd position overall.
Yes, I mean, obviously the SDLP will overtake Alliance and end up as the 3rd party rather than the 4th, but the Ulster Unionists look like they are going to remain in 5th place.
Even though they may be in the offing to get a seat in Fermanagh South Tyrone, you still think that they'll be edged out there, yes?
I think that the difference between Ulster Unionists and Alliance and Fermanagh and South Tyrone is not going to overcome the difference that's already there from elsewhere.
And there is the story that, to some extent or another, most notably with Alliance, there's been a rise in the vote for the more middle ground parties, and the DUP and the Sinn Féin have, across Northern Ireland, taken a bit of a hit.
And it's clear that the electorate has not rewarded them for their position, whatever that may be.
Whether it's Brexit or the Stormont standoff.
Precisely.
Yes, so that's the story, Mark, of the numbers behind those dramatic scenes.
Pretty dramatic indeed. Just looking at those numbers again, they are quite remarkable. I'm told at 57% that is a bigger share than John Hume managed in Foyle, which is quite remarkable. And the swing from Sinn Féin to the SDLP, 18.3%, which is quite something. Just to confirm the numbers again, Colin Eastwood on 57%, that's up 17.7%, and Alicia McCallion on 20.7%, down 19%. I mean, don't think anybody would have predicted that.
No, it's absolutely jaw-dropping. No one anticipated a result like that. I mean,
because what we were hearing during the campaign was, you know, Colin Eastwood was doing very well, but Sinn Féin has a fantastic party machine on the ground in Derry, and I was hearing from people, you know, the SDLP a bit thin on the ground compared to Sinn Féin. Well, maybe if that's the case, it doesn't matter about your workers on the ground, or else whoever was telling me that was completely wrong.
Well, I think it's about the message. In this case, it was the context and the message, and it is a phenomenal result for not just Colin Eastwood personally and for the SDLP, but it actually vindicated his strategy. It has vindicated the fact that he fought a very positive campaign.
So why do you think that's happened? You've made the point earlier, you work there, you live there. Sinn Féin has a very strong presence in the city of Derry and in the constituency of Foyle, and Alicia McCallion did extremely well 2 years ago. Why has her vote halved?
Because the reality is, increasingly it is obvious in Derry that there is no government, there is nothing delivered.
But that's not Alicia McCallion's fault as a Westminster MP.
No, it isn't. But you cannot... Sinn Féin are perfectly entitled to support abstentionism. That's their principle. But they cannot contend, on the other hand, that decisions made in Westminster make no difference to the outcome of Brexit, because it is quite clear that they do make a difference. If they didn't make a difference, we'd have left by the 31st of March last year. So they were trying to put forward an argument that in many ways was nonsensical. Yes, stick to your principles, but don't please say then that there is no influence to be had in Westminster.
But here's my
But their
question
campaign also around nothing ever happened, the SDLP achieved nothing in Westminster, is also not true, because Mark Durkan secured some important concessions that meant, for example, in the event of a United Ireland, that Northern Ireland would be allowed to rejoin the EU. So they were making all sorts of claims they couldn't stand over. And I think people saw through that. But also the context is we don't have an assembly. There was no voice for people here. No one understood what the issues were, particularly west of the Bann.
Do you think, though, that the SDLP going back with 2 seats to Westminster will have any influence over a Conservative government that could well end up with a majority of something in and around 86, which is what our poll is predicting? They're certainly going to have a majority. I don't think anybody's disputing that at this stage. You know, it's going to be a comfortable one.
No, I think it's more important for the party, the SDLP, than it is for the politics. At Westminster, the SDLP, they'll make a difference in the sense that if you look at committees like the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee, it looks horribly lopsided in the previous Parliament because there's simply no nationalist representation there. It's not scrutinising, it's not giving Northern Ireland a voice. But I mean, in terms of whether abstentionism harms Sinn Féin, I think that's a harder call than Deirdre makes out, because it didn't do Sinn Féin any harm in North Belfast. I accept that that was about decapitating the DUP, getting rid of Nigel Dodds. Whether it will open a debate within Sinn Féin over abstentionism, I still doubt.
No, I don't think it will. I think they're perfectly entitled to that position and they can hold to it, but they cannot, on the other hand, claim that nothing of importance happens. The very important debates are there. I'm not saying that their votes would have made a difference, but I'm saying the debates are happening. The decisions will happen in this Parliament. There's no doubt about that. And it is much better to be there and have your voice heard. And yes, 2 MPs won't make a difference, but can they make alliances?
It will only make a difference. It will only make a difference. A point that Angela raised earlier, if Boris Johnson went down the no-deal route because of the inadequate transition period, then the parliamentarians would come into play to block that. And there's enough within the Conservative Party, within David's own party, who would still try and block no deal. The Conservative Party has not overnight become a Leave parliamentary party. And that's an important point to remember. It's at that point the SDLP could be influential, but I don't think Boris Johnson will go down that route. I just don't
the
think
SDLP have always been very good in Parliament, as well as talking across political parties and engaging and putting another point of view. And that has been missing through the whole debate in Brexit, of ensuring that other MPs who are taking decisions understand the breadth of opinion in Northern Ireland, and it's not just a DUP view. There are wider views within Northern Ireland.
And it's not even just the formal parliamentary proceedings,
Absolutely.
the committee or the
Yes.
chamber. It's the opportunities to go and talk to parliamentary colleagues of all parties in the tea room, in the corridors, during divisions, and just say, look, this is why I'm really worried about this issue.
Just would you accept, Edwin, that in Claire Hanna and Colm Eastwood, the SDLP have 2 pretty good communicators who will put their case pretty well? They'll be good at reaching out to people. You can imagine them sitting in the tea rooms and the having a cup of coffee with MPs from right across the House, making their case and making their case well. Now, is that good for Northern Ireland, or does that actually worry the DUP, do you think?
No, I absolutely accept that both Claire and Colm are good communicators.
Good parliamentarians, potentially.
I clearly would believe that Foyle will be better represented as a consequence of having Colm as opposed to Alicia McCallum.
But not South Belfast, obviously.
No.
That'll
be, well, Emma Pengelly is a very, very capable young woman, and she has served very well in many respects. She's lost her seat, and I hope that she doesn't leave politics. I think that there's a good future for talented people like Emma, particularly females.
Bit of speculation that Mark Durkan, his name's being mentioned as someone who might make a return to the Assembly, because somebody's going to have to fill Colm Eastwood's shoes, of course, in Foyle. Does that make sense, Deirdre?
Not really, I don't think so. I think there are other people in the party who would want to be considered at least. There's Mary Durkan, for example, who's a rising star within the party. I'm sure she would want her name to be considered. And it may appear to be a backward step to go back to Mark. He has been a stalwart of the party, and he is taking on a different role in terms, I think, of policy advice. But I think the SDLP, under Colm's leadership, have made a play of young, vivacious, dynamic, bringing a new
You need a bit of
generation.
experience as well. And
Yes,
he, to be fair, he probably needs a job, or would like a job.
Well, he might like a job, but he may get a job as a policy advisor. That could be a different type of job. Doesn't necessarily mean he has to be in the front line, as it were.
Just, okay, so
the difference
you
between
wouldn't give him the note. We've got Lagan Valley coming in a moment. I'm going to speak to Alicia McCallion in just a moment. But John, just a quick word.
Just
and then
one
I'll come
point.
back
Yeah,
to you.
if the Ulster Unionist Party could turn around for Manor and South Tyrone, they apparently trail on the recount, then you'd have 5 parties elected to Westminster. I'm struggling to think when, if ever, that has ever been the case from Northern Ireland. Obviously, one of those parties not taking their seats, but
still,
the big
that's,
5.
That's quite broad representation by any standard.
It is. And put pressure on Sinn Féin as well, because the other parties would be having their voice heard, they'd be engaging, and Sinn Féin would be out in the cold then.
Yeah, well, that's something we'll come back to and toss around a little bit in a moment or two. We're going to get a result in Lagan Valley, I gather, so let's cross over there and just see precisely what's happening. The Deputy Returning Officer is giving the figures, and Jeffrey Donaldson's there.
8606. Donaldson, Jeffrey, Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, 19,586. 19586. Eastwood, Saoirse, Alliance Party, 13,087. 13087. Haydock Alley, SDLP, Social Democratic and Labour Party, 1,758. 1758. Hines, Gary, Conservative and Unionist Party, 955. 955. Love, Allen, UKIP, Unions for Brexit, 315. 315. Cleve, Gary, Sinn Féin, 1,098. 1098. I declare that Donaldson Jeffrey is returned to serve in Parliament for the Lagan Valley constituency. Thank you.
So, Jeffrey Donaldson returned as MP for Lagan Valley. Saoirse Eastwood doing very well for Alliance.
Deputy
Let's hear what Jeffrey has to say.
Officer, my fellow candidates and my team from Lagan Valley. First of all, I want to thank the people of Lagan Valley for electing me again for the 7th consecutive time as their Member of Parliament. And to each and every elector who came out to vote and participate in the democratic process, on behalf of all of the candidates, we thank them. And I congratulate each of the other candidates on fighting a fair and clean campaign in our constituency and for the results that each of them achieved. They are all a credit to Lagan Valley. Yes. Can I also thank the Chief Electoral Officer and her team here in Magherafelt for their diligence in completing the counts here. And I do hope that next time we'll be a little closer to home and a little warmer, perhaps, in our counting format. I want to thank also my team who have supported me during this campaign, my election agent, Euel Mackin, and to all of my supporters for all the help that they've given during this campaign. I also want to thank my family, my wife Eleanor, my daughters Claire and Laura, who are here this evening, for their support, not only in this campaign, but for all of the years that I have been privileged to serve the constituency of Lagan Valley. The results are coming in this evening, and just as we received on the doorsteps, all of us, I think the people of Northern Ireland are giving us a very clear message to all the political parties that they want us to get back around the table and agree to restore our devolved government and get Stormont working again. And we recognise that. And on Monday, when the parties convene, my party will be there to take their place and to work with the others to try and get agreement. And it would be the best Christmas present for the people of Northern Ireland if we could deliver that agreement and get Stormont restored. We desperately need it, the people want it, they demand it, and we must deliver it. It's also been an election where some of my colleagues unfortunately have not made it back to Westminster. And I want to pay tribute to Nigel Dodds and to Emma Little-Pengelly for their work during their time in Parliament, for all that they have contributed to their constituencies and to Northern Ireland. Yes, the DUP has suffered some reversals this evening, but we remain the largest party in Northern Ireland in percentage vote terms and in seats at Westminster. And we will continue to work with the other parties to speak for Northern Ireland in the House of Commons and hopefully in a restored Assembly. And so finally, I want to say that I deeply appreciate the honour that the people of Lagan Valley have bestowed on me yet again to be their representative in Parliament. And I dedicate myself to work tirelessly on their behalf and to be a voice for Northern Ireland in our Parliament in these challenging days ahead. Thank you.
There you go, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson making his acceptance speech, winning that seat in Lagan Valley. I'll just give you the numbers again in case you missed them and we just came in. Robbie Butler for the Ulster Unionist Party, 8,606. His vote went up 2.2%. Saoirse Eastwood, the Alliance candidate, 13,087. She was up 17.7% on last time round. Geoffrey Donaldson, 19,586. And he had 43.1% share. He did have 59.6 last time, so he's down 16.4. His majority down from 19,229 to 6,499. That's a drop of, I make it 12,730. Thoughts on that, John?
Confirms the Alliance surge. Sir Geoffrey was always going to hold his seat, but it confirms the Alliance surge, turns it into a semi-marginal, and confirms Alliance's place as the fourth party now, overtaking the Ulster Unionist Party, the fourth largest party within Northern Ireland. So again, you know, Alliance can take great heart. I mean, they're on. If they can maintain this into an Assembly election next year, you know, goodness knows where it will take them.
Quick thought, Edwin, from you. Again, it's not great. I mean, you've won the seat, and I suppose many people would say won it comfortably enough, but nothing like the style with which Sir Geoffrey did it 2 years ago.
No, but it's a very similar vote. He got 18,500 in 2011. He got 19,500 in 2016. The 2017, as we talked about earlier, and John referred to as well, was an exceptional election for the DUP. It's something that nobody expected us to maintain. We didn't expect to maintain it. So once again, we have got Geoffrey elected and elected very comfortably.
Yeah, you wouldn't have expected, though, the Alliance Party to be so close behind. I mean, 6,000 votes. That's do you accept a very creditable performance by Saoirse Eastwood?
Yes, and I did indicate that we were getting people in the doors who were using Alliance as a vehicle of protest. And I think that's quite evident. But the danger for any party, if you allow another party to become a vehicle of protest, they can become the vehicle permanently. So it's up to us to identify what the issues are with the public and to draw them back to our camp.
OK, thank you. I want to just pause for a moment or two and go to Alicia McCallion, who is in the Magherafelt Count Centre for us. That's where the Foyle seat was counted. And, well, commiserations, first of all, Alicia McCallion. You were well beaten by Colm Eastwood. Why do you think the voters of Foyle plumped for him this time round in such numbers rather than yourself?
Well, firstly, it's important to say that Colm did have a very impressive victory, and I wish him well in the work that he has ahead of him. Clearly, Colm pitched to the people of Foyle, and in large numbers they came out and they voted for him. We will obviously be analysing what has happened in terms of our own electorate, but at this stage it's a little early to say.
Well, you had a majority of 169 last time. He now boasts a majority of over 17,000, a swing from you to him of 18.3%. Your vote almost halved. Whatever you got wrong, you got it very badly wrong.
And again, we will be looking at what exactly has gone wrong. But I think, you know, what is clear throughout the tonight, what has happened tonight, and what we're seeing with every declaration is people across the north are taking the opportunity again to reject Brexit and in many ways reject the DUP. There has been another clear signal and clear message sent from the north over to the Tory government to say that we do reject Brexit. So, I mean, we will be analysing what has happened here in Foyle, but I am pleased in terms of the overall message that is coming from the north, and that's clearly saying to the British government that we here in the north will not accept Brexit in the way that they're looking to put it forward.
Doesn't it tell us something, Alicia, and something very significant, that the voters in Foyle, we can say this, can we not, with some degree of certainty, the voters in Foyle, if they don't like Brexit, they want somebody in the House of Commons making the case for them, rather than whatever kind of influencing it is you're able to do by going there but not taking your seat. That message is clear, is it not?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think there is a clear message in that people want to be represented. Sometimes that's confused with representation in Stormont and representation in Westminster. We're in a position, obviously, where we don't have a functioning executive. We want to be in a position where that's reversed. We want to see a sustainable government in the north. We heard that on the doors. I think sometimes the message is mixed in relation to representation, but what we need to ensure that we do is a Monday that we do come together collectively and get back to the principles of the Good Friday Agreement. And I spoke to Colin tonight, and I look forward to Colin, the SDLP, and all of the parties coming round the table again and coming back to genuine partnership as envisaged under the Good Friday Agreement, because that's what the people want and that's what the people deserve.
Well, you could also argue what the people want is certainly what unionists want in considerable numbers apparently, is to be represented by the DUP's position, which is a pretty firm pro-Brexit stance. At the moment, the DUP's got 6 seats. OK, down 5.9%, but your vote is down, your share is down 7.2% at this stage. I mean, you've got a serious wash-up to do here whenever you look at these figures come tomorrow or Sunday or Monday, whenever it is that you sit down. It's not good.
Well, you obviously need to look at this in the round. We did stand aside in a number of constituencies. I think the clear message, and it is crystal clear, there's no fudging it, the clear message coming from this election in terms of the electorate here in the north is that the electorate reject Brexit in large numbers. I don't think there's anyone that would dismiss that. It's very obvious for anyone to see. The DUP haven't been representing the wishes of the people here in the north, and I think the electorate and the results that we've seen unfold tonight have proven that.
Do you think maybe you and others within Sinn Féin were returned on the back of, to some extent, a sympathy vote after the death of Martin McGuinness 2 years ago? Could that have been a factor that you need to think about?
Listen, I would reject that. Martin McGuinness set down the principles of why we walked out of the institutions. That was the message that resonated with people. The institutions at the time weren't functioning in the way that they should have been functioning. People understood that, people accepted that, but what we need to do now is fix that. We need to fix the institutions, we need to get back around the table, and we need to get back to the principles enshrined in the Good Friday Agreement, and we need to see genuine power sharing, which will deliver on all of the issues that we heard on the door, the issues in relation to health and education and all of the day-to-day issues that are facing our constituents. That's what we need to do on Monday, and we need to do it collectively, all of the parties together.
OK, we'll leave it there. Alicia McCallion, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Let's cross over to Upper Bann, where Carla Lockhart, the DUP candidate, has been confirmed as the new MP. She took over, of course, from David Simpson as the candidate there. Let's just see that confirmation now.
I declare that Carla Lockhart is returned to serve in Parliament for the Upper Bann constituency. Thank you.
It's late. It's early in the morning. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Returning Officer. I want to pay tribute tonight to your staff for the smooth manner in which both the count and the polling day were conducted, allowing the wheels of democracy to run so efficiently. In my opening remarks, I want to thank God for his hand on me and my canvass team throughout this campaign, and indeed on all the candidates and their teams. A winter election is challenging, but we all made it through unscathed. I am extremely humbled that 20,501 people put their trust in me as their DUP MP for Upper Bann. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, David Simpson, who worked tirelessly over the last 14 years and whose experience and guidance I will lean on in the days ahead. I ran a positive campaign. Whilst others sought to dig from the sidelines and attack my party, I campaigned on the record of delivery in Upper Bann. Millions of pounds of funding delivered for Upper Bann, a difference made to many, many lives. I stand on my record of delivery, and the people of Upper Bann embrace that. My canvass team knocked over 28,000 doors in just over 3 weeks. A phenomenal effort by them, and I thank them one and all. I genuinely couldn't have done it without you, and I thank you so much for all your help and support and prayers and help throughout the campaign. I want to thank my election agent, Margaret Tinsley, for being by my side, as she was in 2016 and 2017 and now 2019. So thank you very much. I would like to thank the other candidates who stood for election, as it's never easy on you or your families. Christmas will be a well-earned rest for you and all your teams. As I finish, I want to say a few thank yous to my family, my mum and my dad and my husband Rodney, and my sister.
I think Carla Lockhart's clearly enjoying the moment there. She's looking forward to Christmas, and she's very pleased for all the support she's got from Rodney. I bet you Rodney's glad that that's over. Edwin, interesting one this. Been a bit of speculation that if Carla Lockhart was to take that seat, which she has now done, it provides a berth for Nigel Dodds, who's just lost his Westminster seat, of course, in North Belfast. Does that make sense?
Well, if that's what Nigel wishes to do, he'd be very welcome back to the Assembly, and it's a great parliamentarian.
Who'd make that decision? Would that be the Upper Bann Association?
No, the party officer team.
So if he wants it, it's his?
You've got 7 days to turn this around. It's very, very quick. So you've 7 days and you'll find out who the MLA for Upper Bann will be.
Very, very quickly. OK, and I guess Carla Lockhart, people will say, is a bit of a loss to the Assembly because, again, very capable, good communicator, had to put up with some pretty appalling abuse on social media, but she was enjoying her moment there, to give her credit.
And it may be, if Nigel doesn't wish to go for it, Emma Little-Pengelly could also be slotted in there. Emma's from County Armagh originally, and went to school in Portadown, so she's a close affinity with that constituency.
You've just set up a lovely tussle between Emma Little-Pengelly and Nigel.
Well, there's lots of other local people who would be very talented as well.
I think there are 2 people who are out of a job who might say that they've got first dibs on it, don't you?
Well, that's...
I was interested talking to Elisha McCallion there. Abstentionism, just a quick word about abstentionism, just to touch on this very briefly. Do you think, she was very, very quick to say, we need to sit down, we need to look at what happened, we need to ask why it happened, and we need to come up with some answers. If the decision is, look, abstentionism isn't working for us anymore, there used to be a policy of abstentionism as far as Stormont was concerned and as far as the Dáil was concerned. When Sinn Féin decided abstentionism didn't work for it anymore in those 2 chambers, it changed its policy. If it comes to the conclusion it's not working vis-à-vis Westminster, would it change its policy?
Very, very different, though, entering institutions on the island of Ireland than entering an institution at Westminster and swearing an oath of allegiance to a British monarch.
Yeah, but Stormont was part of a partitionist state.
Of course.
All that rhetoric?
Of course, and, you know, the dissidents, I mean, people did leave Sinn Féin over that, you know, and some people would argue part of the reason that it's not open for debate within Sinn Féin is that it would give, you know, succour to the dissidents who are out there waiting for another, you know, Sinn Féin sellout, as they would see it. But it'd be very difficult. I mean, it would split the party. If Mary Lou McDonald was, or any in the leadership were to propose it, well, first of all, they need a 2/3 majority because it's a change in Sinn Féin's constitution. And secondly, there'd be a lot of voices within Sinn Féin against it. So that's why I don't see it happening. It would be very divisive. You'd end up with a very serious split, I think, within the Republican movement.
Just a quick word about John O'Dowd, by the way. We didn't get the figures there. We saw Carla Lockhart's acceptance speech. She had 20,500 votes. She was down 2.6%. John O'Dowd, who of course ran for the vice presidency of Sinn Féin, got 12,291, down 3.4. But Owen Tennyson, just wanted to mention, 6,433, the Alliance candidate, up 8.3. And Doug Beattie, 6,197. Quick word.
We talk a lot about leadership and a lack of leadership in the political spectrum in Northern Ireland. I think both Naomi Long and Colm Eastwood will feel that their leadership has been part of the success of their parties. It was bold and brave to do what they did, and they've been vindicated.
OK, let's look at these pictures. North Antrim, and we're about to have a declaration. Looks like the Deputy Returning Officer is about to take to the microphone. There's Ian Paisley. No expectation that he's not going to win this with a significant majority, but it will be very interesting. John, just talk us over these pictures. It'll be very interesting to see to what extent it might be reduced.
Yeah, one would expect the majority to be reduced because...
For North Antrim?
He's just looking for more candidates. You're all right.
Okay.
Anybody want to come and stand at the front?
Just before we get to that, I mean, Carla Lockhart's performance is worth commenting, I think.
OK, and we'll do that. Here come the figures. We'll take them first.
Was as follows. McKillop, Margaret Ann, SDLP, Social Democratic and Labour Party, 2,943. 2943. McShane, Cara, Sinn Féin, 5,632, 5632. O'Lynn, Patricia, Alliance Party, 6,231. Paisley, Ian, Democratic Unionist Party, DUP, 20,860. 20860. Palmer Stephen Independent 246 246. Swan Robin Ulster Unionist Party 8,139 8139. I declare that Paisley Ian is returned to serve in Parliament for the North Antrim constituency. Thank you.
Ian Paisley shakes hands with the Deputy Returning Officer. He got 20,860, down by my reckoning by about 8,000 votes.
Praise him, all creatures here below. Praise him above, ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Thank you very much. Mr. Returning Officer, all of your staff, thank you one and all for taking such a busy evening and turning it into such an exciting night for all of us in all of these constituencies. And like the season, it is wintry, but the result does warm our hearts, and we thank you for that. To my campaign team, I want to say a huge thank you. I'm not going to name any of you, with the exception of my election agent, Derek Douglas. I really thank you for all of the hard work that has been done, for all of the doors knocked, and for all of the efforts that have been made. Of course, to my wife and family especially, I give you back my love, which you have given to me throughout this campaign also. I believe that we ran a very positive election campaign in North Antrim. It was helped by the fact that all of the candidates, I believe, engaged in a positive campaign. That there wasn't about negativity, it wasn't about cutting lumps out of each other. It was actually about addressing some of the very important issues that affect each and every one of us, whether we're Protestants, whether we're Roman Catholics, whether we have no persuasion. We face the same challenges, have the same desires, see the same needs. And some of those things struck home, I think, with all of us. As the father of a nurse, I know what it is to see nurses overworked and underpaid. And I think that those messages about our health workers really have struck home to every single public representative. You would have to have a heart of stone if that did not strike home to you. It sends out also another message. 80% of every single door that my campaign team and I knocked, it was sending a strong message. Why is Stormont not working? Please get it back to work. Whatever is happening there, sort it out, or else give the powers back to Westminster. Now, I know the sacrifice that my party made to make Stormont work. I know the sacrifice my father made to make Stormont work. It's in all our interests to get that building back working and as a dynamic place to achieve great things for all of our people. And that message should not be lost on any politician across Northern Ireland tonight. My pledge to the people of Northampton is very, very simple. I pledge to serve you, to serve every single one of you, whether you voted for me or whether you did not vote for me, whether you came out to vote or didn't come out to vote. My pledge is to serve you and to serve you with all of my energy. My desire is to see Northampton as the jewel in the crown of Northern Ireland in terms of employment and in terms of opportunity. And I believe that that can be achieved, and I believe that the journey of creating more job opportunities for our people and making it the most prosperous place in Ulster is absolutely essential, and I want to be on that journey with you. And importantly, I want to say thank you for the confidence that you've given me and for the validation that you've given to me with this election result. As I said, we ran a positive campaign. Yes, it was pro the union. I'm proud of my unionist identity. I'm proud of my heritage. The best place for every single person in Northern Ireland is within a caring union that meets all of our needs. And that union is a British union. And I think that we need to sell that message positively and strongly. Yes, I'm pro-Brexit, and I want a positive Brexit that helps all of our people. It's not about sticking our finger in the eye of people who didn't vote for Brexit. It's about saying to people that Brexit can deliver good for all of us. And yes, my campaign was proudly pro-life. And about saying to people that the most innocent in our society deserve our voice and our protections because they are voiceless and they deserve that support. So, ladies and gentlemen,
that's Ian
you
Paisley
for being here this evening.
making his acceptance speech at the count there at the North Antrim count. And he didn't mention the fact, it has to be said, Edwin Poots, that his vote was down nearly 8,000. Share of the vote down 11.5%. Robin Swan took a big chunk out of that, as did the Alliance candidate.
Well, again, Ian's vote is very similar to his 2016 vote. And again, we had that surge in the 2017, which has come back and normalised once again. But it's actually a tremendous vote that Ian Paisley has got. And although he has had some negative publicity, but you know, to have got that sort of endorsement from his constituency actually demonstrates that he is a really good constituency MP. He works very hard for his constituency, and he remains a very popular Member of Parliament.
And of course, we know, because Arlene Foster let it slip with an interview on The View last week, that he is being investigated by the Common Standards Commissioner concerning allegations surrounding holidays in the Maldives. That, we understand, will pick up again if he's returned, and he's going to be returned.
That I don't... You know,
Arlene Foster's confirmed that that's the case. So
I understand that there's an investigation takes place, so I don't know anything more than that.
Yeah, and we're waiting for some kind of clarification as to precisely what the investigation or the nature of the investigation internally within the DUP is. Arlene Foster told us in June that would happen, but she didn't add to that last week whenever I asked her about it. We don't know where that is. Do you?
Well, I'm sure the party won't want to supersede what the Commissioner's doing.
Right. So it's a serious issue. She said at the time it was a serious issue and it needed to be looked at. So you're not demurring from that position?
Well, if the Commissioner's looking at it, that's the role of the Commissioner. They're independent. The investigation will be conducted, and that's a matter for them to identify if there is an issue.
OK. Let's just talk about these numbers very, very quickly, if you don't mind. Ian Paisley and Edmund Poots makes a point, and it's a point he's made throughout, that maybe we had a bit of a false positive, if you want to think of it that way, 2 years ago, particularly good result for the DUP. Nonetheless, his votes down 11.5%, down about 8,000 votes, but very good from Robin Swan, who'll be very pleased to see his vote go up from 3,500 to over 8,000, up 11%, and Patricia O'Lynn from Alliance, again, up from under 3 to over 6, up 8.5%. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Robin Swan will be particularly pleased. It was a tough job that he had leading the Ulster Unionist Party, but he clearly retains a popularity within an overwhelming Unionist
and it's a tough
constituency.
job doing that in a constituency like North Antrim.
I mean, precisely. No other Ulster Unionist candidate has doubled their party's vote this evening, so it's a very good result. I mean, Ian Paisley was always going to win and win big. Remember that the recall petition, which only needed 10% of signatures to force a by-election in North Antrim, only got 9%. It fell just short, 9.9%, which shows Ian Paisley's own popularity within the constituency, because they didn't want to bring him in to fight a by-election. I think the other DUP result that's worth pointing out, a very good result, is Carla Lockhart's. If you look, the party's vote held up on what has been, in some ways, a tough night in defending the high water mark of 2017. Her vote was only down 2.5%, which is a very, very good result, particularly for a relative political novice, certainly at parliamentary level.
I think also going back to Edmund's point, Ian Paisley will probably be pleased with the way that his vote has held up, given that he appears to be a sort of Teflon man. The scandal rolls off him, and the recall position didn't really seem to make any difference to his popularity. And it is interesting that in his speech he talked at length about jobs and job losses, because his constituency has been particularly hit by job losses, most recently around Wrightbus. And I think where people have criticised him, yes, there are all those Maldives stories, but actually people are very concerned about job losses in the constituency. So I think it was interesting that that's what he decided he was going to focus on.
I think people, and David and Alistair can verify this, as someone who networks, Ian is way up there. He's absolutely brilliant networker, and he can deliver things for his constituency which other MPs would struggle to do. And certainly the Wrightbus scenario, Ian Paisley was a key player in saving those jobs in Wrightbus.
Well, let's hear from the man himself, because if we cross over to Magherafelt now, our correspondent Enda McClafferty is with Ian Paisley, and we can hear what he has to say. I thought he was going to appear on the screen behind me, but he's not. Anyway, Enda's got Ian Paisley with him. Let's hear his reflections on that successful defence of his seat tonight.
I believe hard work. I believe that dedication from the electorate to seeing things achieved for them, practical things achieved for them. And I think that is very important. But I ran a positive campaign. I'm very proud of my unionist identity. I'm very proud of what that does for all of our people, no matter what their background is. I'm very proud that Brexit can deliver good things for our country. Remember, North Antrim is the largest constituency in Northern Ireland to vote Brexit. And I also believe that my pro-life stance attracted people from across the community, people who openly come over to me and said, I'm from a different tradition than you, you're the only party we can't vote for on these moral issues, and I think that that's very important. And but I also think the hard work that I've done on the ground, especially with regards to industry and trying to keep employment in the constituency, has been very, very important, very helpful.
Are you relieved in any way that the fact that you were suspended from Westminster, you had that difficult time, and of course Arlene Foster now tells us that you're under investigation by the Standards Commissioner once again, that didn't backfire on the doorsteps, that you didn't pay a price for that?
Well, I think it's one thing's been made very, very clear. First of all, the facts of the matter is there's no investigation ongoing as far as I'm aware of. All investigations ceased. And so I'm not aware of that. Whatever happens now in the new Parliament is up to the new Parliament, and I face any of those things, as I always do, head on.
So was Arlene Foster wrong then, but you said that?
I'm just making that clear. And your legal department, and don't play the silly boy with me, you know what the situation is because your legal department's been involved in it. The BBC's been involved in it. If the BBC has anything to say about me, say it. Send it to Parliament and say it. Don't try and twist and get me to say it for you.
We're just going on what Arlene Foster had to say. She said it. She made it very clear on the View programme.
Don't ask around on this one.
Well, she made it very clear.
Don't mess around.
Well, she's saying one thing and you're saying another.
I don't really want to get into this. Let's be absolutely clear. I've made the case, but I've made a very positive campaign as a Member of Parliament, and I think that campaign speaks for itself. I think the result speaks for itself. And, to have almost 50% of the constituency support you after the abuse and the allegations that have been made against me, and the campaign very ably won, and the £400,000 spent by the BBC going back and forwards around the world to try and unseat me, I'm very pleased tonight that it didn't work.
What about the performance of some of your DUP colleagues? It has been a difficult night for the party, has it not?
Thank you very much. I'm really, really disappointed that Nigel's lost his seat. Of course, where Nigel is a huge asset to unionism, a huge asset.
So that was Ian Paisley talking to my colleague Enda McClafferty there. Well, not very keen to talk about that particular issue that I was asking Edwin Poots about, which is that apparent investigation by the Common Standards Commissioner, which was confirmed by Arlene Foster. But anyway, look, you heard the conversation, and that was his position on it. And we'll park that one because we've already talked about it, and we'll move on to talk about other issues. I'm just looking here to see how many seats we have. Well, we know we've got a recount in Fermanagh, South Tyrone, and I think once we get confirmation from Newry and Armagh, that'll be the 17 that we're probably going to get on this particular programme, it has to be said, because I don't think we're going to stay here for Fermanagh, South Tyrone. We're going to be thrown out by breakfast.
You can if you like.
No. I've got my second wind at this stage. I think I'm on about my 14th wind at this point. What about the bigger picture? Look, we've talked a lot about those figures. And David and Angela, you've been keeping a very close eye on various monitors here on the position across the water. I'm going to get the numbers up. But in terms of shocks or things that are positive, what would you draw attention to at this stage, David?
Conservatives now have an overall majority in the House of Commons. There will be a majority Conservative government. And there are Conservative MPs representing working-class urban seats that have not had a Conservative representative since the 1930s. It is an astonishing trap. I'm someone who's not always agreed with Boris Johnson and everything, but he has judged the political moment and the campaign right to get that majority. There will be a huge responsibility now on him to deliver what those people who voted for him have hoped and expected he would deliver. The word of caution I would give is that the SNP's advance in Scotland, I think, with a Scottish election pending in 2021, means that issue is going to remain with us. I think the Labour Party and even more the Lib Dems are going to have to do some really serious rethinking.
Angela, we've just got those stats. I know there's a crawler across the bottom of our screen which will update people, but just to be clear, 604 seats declared, 46 to go. As David says, the Tories already have a majority, 332 seats. That's up 43. And your party, Labour, 197. At this stage, you're down 55 with potentially more losses to come. The Red Wall disappeared. The Labour Red Wall disappeared a very, very long time ago. It isn't good, and you can't really try and talk your way out of it, can you? You wouldn't suppose to.
No, you wouldn't expect me to either. We're disappointed, bitterly disappointed. I've lost some really good colleagues tonight that I think are important in Parliament and to the Labour Party and to the country. I suppose I have two fears and two big worries now. One, the Labour Party really has to get its act together and look at this very carefully and make very strategic and probably some profound decisions about how we move forward from here. And I've said before, no leader, and Jeremy Corbyn today has said, I'm going to go, but no leader wants to lead their party to such a terrible defeat. There are some glimmers of hope from us. There are some good results from some good. I'm very pleased the campaign I worked mostly on. Our majority has increased, I think, something like fivefold.
You're now doing a David Ford.
You look for some pleasure where you can on nights like this. I think my biggest fear, though, is around the future of the country and Brexit. Because if Boris Johnson holds this idea, this get Brexit done, it's as meaningless as Brexit means
It's
Brexit.
worked for him.
It's worked for him in the electoral terms, but will it work for the country in the longer term? And if he says the transition, as he said before, has got to end by the end of next year, that is a very, very tight schedule. And he wouldn't rule out leaving without a deal.
Well,
Getting
3.5
Brexit
years
done,
to do it, honestly.
Well, no, it's not what he said.
In fairness, you know,
no, I'm sorry.
Parliament has procrastinated and delayed,
What has
and
caused
the Labour
Parliament
Party
problems?
has now been punished for that.
Well,
and
it's not the
Labour
Labour Party
seats
that's been-
right across
no,
the
it's
north
not the Labour Party that's been
voted very
punished.
heavily for
Yeah,
Brexit.
hang on, it's the
and
country that
they've
I'm
been punished
worried.
for it.
I'm worried that the country being punished for it. If we leave without a deal, the impact of that on the whole of the UK, including Northern Ireland, is enormous. And so I think there's a job of work for the Labour Party to be, even with reduced numbers, to be a very effective opposition here. And we will work with the new MPs from Northern Ireland, who I think will be very active in trying to put that alternative case. But I think the rush to get Brexit done in this year, having spent so long not getting a deal, and then saying basically we can leave without a
I think it's
deal.
December next year, not this year that they're talking
Next
about.
year, yes.
Yeah.
But within a year, he's saying.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you about leadership. Is there an obvious successor to Jeremy Corbyn? We had a bit of a conversation when you weren't at the table. Now that you're here, who would you...
Who did you pick when I wasn't here?
Well, there were various names mentioned. We heard Emily Thornberry's on manoeuvres, Rebecca Long-Bailey. I don't know, you tell me. Keir Starmer out of the mix?
I don't think so. I think Keir's had to be a strong candidate, but it depends when it is, and people make their decisions as we move forward. But when you look, we've lost some good people. We've actually got some very strong performers, and perhaps part of the problem is we didn't see enough of our strongest performers during the election campaign itself.
Okay, I'll come back to that rest of you in a moment or two, but I want to go back to Mark Devonport, who's got more numbers that we need to have crunched for us. So, Mark, it's all yours.
I think what we'll do first of all, Mark, is we'll turn to North Antrim. We're obviously hearing there from Ian Paisley, who's very pleased to have come out on the top of the pile. Let's just have a quick look at that result now in North Antrim. There he is at the top, but it is not quite the commanding lead that he had previously because Nicholas, his majority's been cut quite significantly. If we just go and look at how the votes have changed there in North Antrim, you'll see that, yes, he took a big fall, and actually the Ulster Unionists did rather better than they've done elsewhere. Any explanations for that?
I mean, what we didn't have in North Antrim this time round, we didn't have the TUV, Traditional Unionist Voice.
So maybe Robin Swan was able to soak up some of Jim Allister's votes.
I mean, it would look to me like that's partly what's happened. Also worth noting, Sinn Féin finished second here last time around. They finished fourth this time.
And Alliance also performing pretty well. Yeah. We'll take a look at the overall position in Northern Ireland with 17 out of 18 declared now. Yeah. And let's have a quick look there in terms of the share of the parties across Northern Ireland, because again the story here is that Alliance has come through into third place despite those massive victories for the SDLP in South Belfast and Foyle. Alliance still pipping them there at this stage.
It has to be said that the SDLP's vote record has been a bit mixed this time. I make it up in about the same number of constituencies they're down.
And here's the change between them, and again this will tell the story of a really good election for Alliance, and both the DUP and Sinn Féin taking hits.
Well, Alliance's vote share is more than doubled, I think.
And I think we can have a quick look in terms of the swings that we've seen. First of all, this is within unionism, just a very small swing, I think, there to the UUP, not enough to make that much of a dent. Within nationalism, a significant swing to the SDLP. And then if we look Alliance versus the DUP, well, yes, we see that there's been a good result there for Alliance. We could also take a look at the results in... oh, sorry, hang on, we've got up a band there. Hang on, I'll just come back there, sorry, to the Northern Ireland position. We'll take a look at the 5 parties overall. And you can see the Alliance squeezing into third position, and that would have been unheard of as we look back over those years there, where Alliance was definitely down in the 5th position. That's really quite a development.
And when you look at where Alliance was in 2001, like literally almost 20% behind all of the other parties.
And I was trying to show the overall DUP Alliance swing, and I think I brought up the upper bound one by accident. We'll see if we can just do that now. Yeah, there's an overall across Northern Ireland swing of 7.5% to Alliance.
I mean, what that says to me is that the DUP has established itself as the mainstream unionist party, but at the same time, voters who are now thinking of something else, they're not stopping the Ulster Unionist Party in between. They're going straight to Alliance.
And just finally, I'm just going to bring up one to go from the big picture to a few personalities here.
Indeed.
These are the big vote getters, and four of the top five have reason to be very happy, but one not so.
Yes, I mean, Nigel Dodds there, having got more votes than all but three other candidates in Northern Ireland, unfortunately didn't get more votes than one of them, and therefore he's no longer a Member of Parliament.
And that is what politics is all about. You can do as well as you like, but if your opponent does better, then
you lose.
That's the end of the story for you. Back to you, Mark.
That's how it works, isn't it? It's as simple as that, some people might say. Thank you. Hopefully we'll hear from you between now and the end of our programme. We're going to come off air at 5:30, so we've about 15 minutes left. We have 17 of the 18 Northern Ireland constituencies declared. We know there is a recount in Fermanagh, South Tyrone, because things were very tight there between Sinn Féin and the Ulster Unionist Party. We'll hear from our correspondent, Julian Fowler, in due course, and we'll get the latest from him in a moment or two. But let's hear now from some successful candidates we just haven't had a chance to hear from earlier in the evening. West Tyrone, Mid Ulster, East London, Derry and Newry and Armagh. All of these people successful, all of them telling us now why they think they did so well. Let's hear what they've had to say.
Well, we stood in the platform that we would stand up against Brexit, that we would reject Tory austerity, which people are feeling on the ground today in terms of the health service, and that we put forward the case for a new and agreed Ireland. We asked the electorate to come out, and we've seen from the weeks leading up to this election that they were very much engaged in terms of Brexit. This constituency in West Tyrone is a border constituency, and we're going to feel the implications in terms of Brexit and the dire consequences that it's going to bring to the people living here.
And when those who try to analyse and say votes are down, I hope they will look at the vote that we got in East London Derry and see that our majority is up in East London Derry. And that's because the people here in East London Derry want a hard-working, effective, hard-hitting MP who doesn't pull any punches.
Brexit has been rejected by the voters of Mid Ulster on a number of occasions, right across the north. Brexit has wrecked the Westminster politics and will wreck the Union. With a clear majority in Westminster, the Tories will not give a thought for the input to the north of Ireland and what Brexit will likely do to it. But with Irish unity, we can be part of the European Union in the future. So we return to the work of Mid Ulster of contingency representation, but also delivering unity for the Irish people.
Newry and Armagh has spoken. Brexit has been rejected. The Remain parties are in the ascendancy. Brexit, as far as we are concerned, is a non-runner. And as far as I'm concerned, I will work very, very hard to ensure that the people of Newry and Armagh constituency have a bright and prosperous future, and indeed all the people on this island. Unity is no longer an aspiration, it is now a project. Goramila Mayagat.
So there you go, 4 successful candidates from whom we had not heard. Let's go to our virtual Westminster studio. Mark Simpson is there. And the good news, I suppose, is that the end is in sight.
Watch out for some new faces at Westminster from Northern Ireland. It's been a night when a number of seats have changed hands. Here is the new Northern Ireland political map. On the face of it, it doesn't really look that much different. Still dominated by DUP red and Sinn Féin green. And there is still that east-west divide between unionism and nationalism. But if you look closely, you can see some real changes. 2 SDLP seats, they're back. That's the dark green you can see in Foyle and South Belfast. And the Alliance Party in yellow there winning North Down. In 1 seat, they're still counting. That's Fermanagh, South Tyrone, of course. One of the biggest battles, of course, tonight was in North Belfast between Sinn Féin's John Finucane and the DUP's Nigel Dodds. It was said to be too close to call between these two men, but in the end, John Finucane won by almost 2,000 votes. He's a happy man this morning. And over in London, the happiest man of all is Boris Johnson. He has retained the keys to Downing Street, and with a comfortable majority, he could be there for the next 5 years.
OK, he certainly could. There is no doubt about that. Mark, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's just come back to my panel. I'm just wondering if we've reviewed in any way our thoughts about what all of this might mean for politics locally. Deirdre, in terms of our politicians going back up to Stormont at the start of next week, what impact is the result across the water and the result here in Northern Ireland likely to have on that, if any?
Well, I think it will have a huge impact because, as we said earlier, when the parties are going into talks, generally they want to be buoyant, coming in on the back of success. Sinn Féin will not view this election as successful for them, and the DUP certainly won't. But what was interesting, in almost every speech given by DUP candidates now, the Assembly was mentioned. Every single one of them talked about getting Stormont back up and running. Clearly there's no power base in London anymore, and there's no power base for Sinn Féin in London or Belfast or Dublin at the moment. So the focus will, I think, return to Belfast and the importance of getting government back here and getting it back quickly. I think also the health crisis did impinge on the campaign, and the real anger was felt. The candidates were told in no uncertain terms that what was happening simply wasn't good enough. Generally, it was a rather dull, though lacklustre campaign that never really ignited, but in the end has produced some fascinating results. I think probably the DUP and the SDLP, though neither would admit it, would have liked to see a hung parliament. That hasn't happened, and so the outcome in terms of Boris Johnson and his resounding victory will, of course, have huge implications for Northern Ireland.
Edwin, two clear messages from a DUP perspective: get Brexit done, make Stormont work?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're absolutely convinced if Brexit is actually done and we move away from that uncertainty and people see what the reality is instead of all of the scare stories, that things will settle down very quickly on that front. And on the other side of things, we need devolved administration. We need Stormont to work. And people want to see both sides of the community coming together and making sure that Northern Ireland's a better place than it was during the time that I was brought up.
Hold that thought, Angela. I'm going to come to you in a second or two, but I just want to get a final update from Julian Fowler, who's at the Fermanagh South Tyrone count, where we know things are very tight, and 21,900 votes to the two main candidates, maybe 60-odd votes separating them. What's the state of play as we bring this programme to a close, Julian?
Well, they're still sorting through those ballot papers. They broke up all the bundles and they've been counting every single vote once again. Certainly from the body language, Sinn Féin appear to be the more relaxed. Michelle O'Neill has arrived here at the Count Centre in Omagh to give her support to Michelle Gildernew. The Ulster Unionists party officers have been in a huddle, and I think they've been examining maybe some of those doubtful or uncertain votes that have been cast. So no idea yet as to when the recount will be concluded. As I say, they're still sorting through those ballots, so we will wait and see. But as you say, when they began the recount, Michelle Gildernew was told she was 62 votes ahead at that stage of Tom Elliott. So we'll have to wait and see what the result of this recount will be.
Find out in due course, but we'll not be here to see it. Julian, thanks very much indeed for that. Angela, I asked you to hold that thought for a second or two. You were shaking your head in disagreement with Edwin.
I was. It was the point that you made about how the DUP's victors in the election were all saying we have to get the Assembly up and running again. Isn't it a tragedy it's taken a Conservative majority in Parliament to bring that impetus forward from the DUP? That could have been done 2-3 years ago, and what a difference that could have made.
It wasn't us brought it down, or we didn't
stop
it from going back.
Oh, it's always somebody else's fault. Doesn't matter whose fault it is.
Sinn Féin resigned, they walked away from it.
I wonder why. It's actually, now that position hasn't changed. What we have got now is a Conservative government in Westminster, and that's what's brought the impetus forward. What I hope we see from the Conservative government is a real, much greater interest in how Northern Ireland operates, and a Secretary of State that really wants to get these talks going.
Will we see that, David Ludington?
I think in Julia Smith you've got that, the Secretary of State.
If he comes back.
I think what is needed now is for the parties in Northern Ireland to deliver on the speeches that they've been giving this evening and get Stormont back, not least because if we're looking to the really important phase 2 of Brexit, the future agreement with the EU, and a functioning Northern Ireland Executive and Assembly will have much more influence than any individual political party from Northern Ireland.
But I also think this is a wake-up call for both Sinn Féin and the DUP.
Yes, I do, yeah.
And be careful what you wish for in terms of direct rule, because if you have direct rule under this government, there may be much less sympathy towards the so-called plight of Northern Ireland. And we've been hearing in the weeks running up to election about how we need more money, how we need more money. I'm quite sure the people in England who are supporting Brexit, and after all it appears that Brexit is very much an English phenomenon, will have very little sympathy with calls for yet more money to be delivered to Northern Ireland when people are not sitting, taking responsibility and making decisions.
And I know from experience, though, once you get direct rule, I was told I'd be a direct rule minister for around 6 months, and I was here for 3.5 years, and direct rule continued for next year.
That's because you're so brilliant, Anne's at the job.
Can you say so? But you know, once it's hard to get rid of, and that's not a position I think we want to go into.
Doing nothing is not an option. That's the point.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and there is money that has been allocated to Northern Ireland that's sitting there, cannot be spent because there are not ministers to authorise civil servants to spend it.
Well, that's the mess. The difficulty is it's hard to find somebody who's prepared to actually make a decision to allow some of the things that people think need to happen.
Well, it requires political authorisation, which means either Stormont comes back together or there has to be an Act of Parliament passed at Westminster that gives Westminster ministers who are not accountable directly to Northern Ireland voters the power to do that.
And just briefly, David, should it be clear from the government that if the talks at Stormont fail and Stormont's not coming back in the short term, that's it, we're back to direct rule, somebody has to be in the driving seat?
Well, the law at the moment lays down that there should be an election to Stormont, and I think that would need to be the next step. If that then produced deadlock, my own view is that very reluctantly we would have to go down some kind of direct rule path.
OK, we need to leave it there, folks. That is just about it. We're almost out of time. Thank you very much indeed. Edwin, you've been here for a long time. Well, you've all been here for a very long time. I mean, we started this with David and Angela. We need to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That's just about it from this marathon overnight results programme. Our colleagues in London will continue here on BBC One. Coverage begins again at 6 a.m. on Radio Ulster, and there will, of course, be continuous service right through the day on the BBC News website as well. Join me for an hour-long Sunday Politics special at 10:15 on BBC One this weekend, when the dust may have settled and we can look at things with a fresh pair of eyes. Until then, thank you very much for your company. If you're still with us and you were here at the start, you can give yourself a badge. We will leave you with the best bits of a night which saw massive changes to the political map and has given us plenty to talk about in the weeks and months ahead. From all of us, night-night.
Head toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Head toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Woo, child, tired of the foolish. Gone, dust your shoulders off. Keep it moving, yes, Lord. Step into some new kicks. In there, swimwear, going to the pool quick. Come now, come dry your eyes. You know you a star, you can touch the sky. I know that it's hard, but you have to try. If you need advice, let me simplify. He don't love you anymore. Just walk your fine self out the door. I do my head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Feeling good as hell. Baby, how you feeling? He don't love you anymore.
In Scotland, I can't give advice to Boris Johnson.
He's the Prime Minister, and you've been through this before. I'm asking you, what should